سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. رب زدني علما. أما بعد, my dear respected brothers and sisters, welcome to a panel discussion by the scholars of the Central Hilal Committee of North America. I'm with you, your brother Burhanuddin from New York, joining from New York today. We have on our panel, alhamdulillah, uh, very experienced and active ulama in the moonsighting field. We have Mawlana Shakil Rahman joining in from Burlington, Massachusetts, and Mufti Idris Abdul Salam from Chicago, Illinois. We have a great discussion to have today. We welcome you and uh, invite you to pass the information of this webinar meeting onto your friends and family so they can benefit from this very valuable discussion today. We welcome all of our brothers and sisters who are looking for the information, important and crucial information regarding a very, very uh, important but contentious part of our deen that unfortunately has become so very contentious and so very difficult for some reason to understand. Yet it is so very easy and simple. This matter has been very highly and unnecessarily politicized. The matter of our ibadah, the matter of the timing of our ibadah is not a political matter, is not a matter to vote on, nor is it a matter to argue about between us, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us very clearly what to do. His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam he was sent to show us what to do, and he completed his mission. In the final Hajj, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam stood and in the final khutbah, in the khutbah in Arafah, he gave he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. I completed the deen upon you today, and I completed my favor which I conferred upon you, and I have been pleased with Islam as your path of life. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he asked them that the Muslims, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum were present, that have I conveyed the message to you? He asked them 3 times, and they all answered in one voice, Yes, Ya Rasulullah, yes, Ya Rasulullah, you have conveyed, you have conveyed. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam pointed to the skies, to the heavens, and he said, Allahumma shahad, Allahumma shahad, Allah, you are witness, you are witness. Anything that is a change after that is going to be less than, worse than what was taught to us and given to us. We have to remind ourselves that this is a purely ibadah related matter. We have to put all of our emotions and feelings on the side. And remember, for anything in our deen to be accepted, it has to be one, done with ikhlas, with only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and two, done with ittiba' of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, following the footsteps of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Ikhlas and ittiba' are the basic conditions of any action being accepted. So we have to remember that we're talking about something related to our deen. We have to put our emotions on the side and think about it. This is purely related to the timing of our ibadah. Timings, amounts, values. For example, zakat, how much zakat we give is a particular fixed percentage, it's a particular fixed amount. We cannot just get out of our mind. We cannot even infer them. We have to get them directly from the Quran and Sunnah. Similarly, the timing of Salah, similarly, the sighting of the moon, and how we time our fasting ibadah, how we time our Hajj. All of this is to be taught to us directly by Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We can't guess it. And furthermore, it is not okay for us to change whatever amount, whatever value, whatever system Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught in this matter. So this is purely related to the timing of our ibadah. Not one ibadah is related to it. Many ibadat are related to it. Most importantly, or most prominently, fasting and Hajj. The two pillars of Islam are related directly to this. And then, of course, other things related to the iddah of a woman whose husband passed away. Example of the widows, and then our zakat calculation, how we do the when we do the calculation. All of these things are related to our moon sighting. Some people ask, is it not that? Some people ask, is it not that some people ask that, is it not that we are in a time when we're able to calculate things and come to we're able to use math and science for our benefit to do things that we were not able to do in the past? We're going to discuss more detail about that, but I'd like to tell you very clearly that Muslims were never averse to math and science. On the contrary, we look at it as an ibadah. We look at math and science as an ibadah. We say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He taught us these natural sciences to get to know Him for the ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is how we and our predecessors treated it, and thus we excelled in it. We're going to see some examples of that today. But we should also keep in mind that the Muslims use mathematics in their ibadah when it's necessary, or rather when we're told by the Sharia to use it. For example, in miras, when we calculate our inheritance shares, we use mathematics. Muslims are never averse to that. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught us how to do it. Yusikumullahu fi awladikum. Allah advises you about your children, about your inheritors, and He goes on from there and gives us mathematical calculations of how to do it. Point is, we were never averse to it. We should not think that we're going backwards and we're not using science and math where we can to make our lives easier. Where we are allowed to in our deen, we will most definitely do it. Where we are not allowed, where we are told explicitly to do what we are told, we cannot do it. It's very simple as that. And then we have to also think before we take another step forward. Is there a different deen for us here where we are in the US? Is there a different deen for us because we traveled across the Atlantic Ocean? Maybe we came across the Pacific Ocean. Whichever direction we came, is it a different deen for us than the rest of the Muslims? Or is it a different deen for us than what was followed by the Muslims for 1400 years? Is it that our deen is not suitable for this time, na'udhu billah, and age in which we live in? My dear brothers and sisters, we have ageless deen and timeless principles. It is just a matter of putting our putting our actions to where the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are. And people ask about, how do we end all of the moon fighting? How do we end? And I mind you, I say moon fighting because it's not about moon sighting anymore, because people have not, unfortunately made this a very contentious and a matter of argument. How do we end all the moon fighting? There's one simple answer to it, whether we like to accept it or not. It is the Quran and Sunnah. And do we think that something as important as the timing of our Sawm, our fasting, the timing of our Hajj, the timing of our Qurbani Udhiyah, the timing of the Iddah, and etc., these important parts of our Deen, do you think the Deen that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has left us is in the dark about it? We have a beautiful Deen that has a perfect balance of ritual and spiritual. The ritual part of it must be followed as we are taught, and the spiritual part of it is an underlying objective behind all of that. So we have some religions in the world that have nothing but ritual. They go to their places of worship, they on particular days, they follow the particular rules to it, at least some of them do, but they have no spirituality behind it anymore. They look to alter and change the religion whenever it's hard for them. And then there's other people who follow, have nothing but what they claim to be spirituality. When they go to their places of worship, they do nothing but singing and dancing and clapping. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a beautiful balanced deen that has ritual in it and has spiritual in it. We cannot leave either one out. Do you think Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam left us in the dark about this? To say that we are left to figure out something which Allah's Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba and the generations to come, they made absolutely clear to us. To say that it is still unclear today is to say that they didn't do their job. Na'udhu billahi min dhalik. Taking a step back, you think that if someone could say that, why couldn't the text be just be explicit, so that that there'll be no more argument left anymore? Why couldn't they just say, don't calculate? Or why couldn't they just say, do it like this? Well, we're here to tell you today with the proofs from the Quran and Sunnah that that's exactly what Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam did. Exactly what they did. And they told us clearly, explicitly, this is what we are supposed to do, and this is what we're not supposed to do. And before we go on to our speakers today, I'd also like to say that, my dear brothers and sisters, the Ummah is going through a very, very difficult time right now, a very, very difficult period. We are at such difficult crossroads at this moment, where our Muslims all over the world are in difficulty and problems, oppressed. 90 something percent, I would like to say, if not 100, of the refugees of the world are Muslims. We have to take a step back. Is this time to make more differences amongst the Muslims by introducing unheard of, new, unprecedented ideas in the name of simplification? Because anything we do, we're just going to go from unity to disunity. We're going to go from what is established to what is not, from what is sent by Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam to what is unprecedented. Is this the time, the breaking the ijma of the ummah for the 1400 years? We have to take a step back and think what is happening around us, and lest we fall into any kind of misunderstanding about it. Without any further ado, we will talk about all of these issues and more, inshallah. I'd like to first call upon our uh, respected scholar, Maulana Shakil Rahman, joining in from Burlington, Massachusetts. If you don't know what that is, that's right by Boston. And Maulana Sahib will give us. Maulana is the Imam of the Islamic Center of Burlington, an active Moonsighter every single month. Alhamdulillah, Maulana has done a great effort behind this, and an active member of the Central Hilal Committee of North America, among the many other roles that Maulana plays. We welcome Maulana Shakilur Rahman to start our discussion today.
الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد، وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني قولي. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. My dear respected panelists, ulama, and respected listeners, Assalamu Alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd like to thank and say Jazakallah khairan to Mufti Burhan Sahib for introducing the talk and the importance of the issue. So we really want to get down into it. I want to encourage everyone, inshallah, that is listening. Please, this is the time to get your questions addressed. This is the time to get your questions answered, inshallah. So please don't hesitate if you feel like there's an issue or something in your mind that is clouding your judgment about what the Quran and Sunnah explicitly mention and things that the Quran and Sunnah directly say, then we have to clarify these things. We should not think that, like how Mufti Burhan Sahib had mentioned, that Nabi alayhi salatu will leave the Ummah in the dark, or that Allah will leave the Ummah in the dark about this issue. And we should not think bad about our centuries of scholarship, that we have so much, such a great dhakhira, such a great treasury of knowledge that our scholars did not speak about these issues as well. So I want everyone, inshallah ta'ala, to be with that open mind and listen in with that, inshallah ta'ala. So we have here the overview of what we're going to be speaking about today. It's first and foremost the importance of moonsighting. Number two is the proofs in favor of moonsighting, or the proofs discussing moonsighting. The third one is going to be what about calculations. The fourth will be why do some people not follow moonsighting. And the fifth is why must we stick to moonsighting, and what is the crux of the issue. I want everyone to know that by preparing these slides and the fact that we've written many papers on this topic and we've been very much invested in this issue, that I always go in whenever I speak about any topic from the ground and then build the case up. You look at it objectively speaking, and you look at it rationally and academically, and then you see what the Quran and Sunnah directly say. So I want everyone to understand that when we speak about the proofs today, we're building the case from the beginning, okay? So people can see that this is where the dalil comes from, this is where the evidence comes from, and that way people can feel confident and be assured that what you're following is 100% authentic Quran and Sunnah. There's no way the other way around it, inshallah ta'ala. So
forgive me for for one quick second. A housekeeping matter. The questions and answers will be addressed at the end of the program. So please, if listen to the entire program through. At the end, you will be afforded the time to put your question and answer in the Q&A box. Whatever questions are put in the chat will not be answered. If there's something else that needs to be addressed, like a volume issue or something like that, you can definitely put that in the chat. But the questions will be answered after the program, inshallah.
So the first thing is the issue of the importance. Why is it so important to discuss this topic? Again, Mufti Burhan Sahib had mentioned it very beautifully about how this is connected to our ibadah. It's a part of the acts of worship. And so we need to, the same way we make sure the conditions of prayer are established, that we can begin the prayer. Similarly, when it comes to the conditions of Ramadan, we have to make sure the condition has been fulfilled, so that way everyone can perform the Ramadan. Okay. In terms of moonsighting specifically though, we find Allama Ghafar Ahmad Uthmani rahimahullah ta'ala, he writes, since many legal rulings and religious acts of worship revolve around the lunar calendar, its preservation and determination are obligatory on the community, fardan ala al-kifayah. Okay, there's a fard kifayah. What a fard kifayah is, for everyone just to generally understand, an obligation upon the community. For example, the janazah prayer. When a community has a janazah, someone who passed away, in order to perform the prayer, a group of Muslims must perform that prayer. And so that's an example of a fard kifayah. So he says, similarly, the same case goes for moonsighting, that every community must do so. What is the importance of the fard kifayah? If a group of Muslims do not perform the fard kifayah, the entire community will be sinful. So we should be grateful to those brothers and sisters that spend some time and actually go out and sight the moon every single month, because they are keeping the community safe from becoming disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is no doubt, he continues, that to tend to communal obligations are an act of worship. And those methods which facilitate its preservation become acts of worship as well. Therefore, the usage of the lunar calendar is desirable by Sharia standpoint, reported in his Ahkam al-Quran. We also find Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi rahimahullah ta'ala, he said the wisdom in this is that Allah has made the sun and the moon two of his signs, and is related in some sources that he assigned to each an angel and decreed for them points of rising. He moved between the two for two benefits, meaning Allah moves us between the sun and the moon for two benefits. One worldly, which is the solar calendar, and the other religious, which is based upon the lunar calendar. I want to make it clear to everyone, the Deen is a simple religion in the sense that everyone can practice it. It's an easy religion for everyone to practice. What that means is that even if a person were to be in the desert and an area where they don't have any way of calculating or any way of determining prayer times through mathematics or anything like that, what a person will find is that they can just check the shadow's length, they can check the place of the sun, the position of the sun in the sky, and through that they can figure out what time to pray. Similarly is the case about moons. Now here's the thing, if you use a solar calendar, because of how difficult it is to determine the position of the sun in the entire solar system. Like, where are we now, right? Where's the position of the Earth versus the solar system, before position of the Earth and the sun, right? So you're not going to be able to figure out that the sun is 365 days. A person in the desert would never be able to do that. But what can a person do in order to understand? And what can a person do in order to understand the time of the month, or which month are we in? They can always use the moon. The moon is always there to tell you if the month is over or if it's beginning. What does the person need to do? Just they need to count 29 days or 29 days and go and look for the hilal, and they're able to easily identify when it's Ramadan, even if in the desert, or when it's time for Hajj. And this is exactly what the Quran says. So this is the benefit of the lunar calendar. Our ibadah is connected to the lunar calendar. And we have already spoken about this. Mufti Burhan has mentioned it already, that many acts of deen are based on this correct calendar being used.
It's really interesting, Mashaki, that you say that, because the way Allah Subhanahu wa Taala words it in the Quran, I think it just alludes to it right away. It says that Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, يسألونك عن الأهلة. They ask you about the moons, the Hilla. قل هي مواقيت للناس. This is the way of setting time for all of mankind. Like, this is the clock that Allah put in the sky. This is the clock that Allah put in Ajib, Tabarakallahu Ahsanul Khaliqeen, a clock that doesn't need a battery, doesn't need electricity. It has beautiful, beautiful light. It not only gives you very picturesque moonlight in the nighttime, but it gives you, it's a natural clock. And one clock Allah gave for the day, that's the sun, and another clock Allah gave for the month, that is the moon. So the daily hourly clock Allah put in the sky, the natural one is the sun, and the monthly one Allah put in the sky is the moon. And Allah Ta'ala says, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ. It is a mawaqit, it is a way of sending time for all of mankind. And then the Hajj, that one Hajj is also related to that.
Yeah, Jazakallah Mufti Sahib. And that's so true. That the fact that the deen is so simple, mashallah, that again, the daily calendar, the daily routine is set through the sun, and then the monthly calendar. And some scholars have mentioned, yes, أَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ وَالْحَجِّ. Because Hajj actually notes the end of the year. So they said that Allah Ta'ala was indicating that the year can also be determined through the lunar calendar. Now think about it, like that people, unfortunately, if we really understand that the solar calendar has to be manually manufactured by human beings. The fact is that we have 365 days of the year, but you know that every single 4 years we have to add an extra day. It's a very man-made system, whereas Allah has made it a very natural system, which is through the sun and the moon. If we just let them operate on their exact way, and the moon is self-correcting, right? If even if you weren't able to sight it one month, it will fix itself by the next month, or readjust itself. So the 354 days for the lunar calendar is always clear. It's always apparent for anyone who wants to do that. So, mashallah, we have a lot of acts of deen that are connected to the moon. The menstrual cycles of a sister, iddah and divorce, zakah, fasting specific masnoon days, the white days, Ashura, Arafah, Hajj, Ramadan, they're all exclusive to the lunar calendar. This is why it's very important. Fard al-kifayah. Again, a communal obligation that everyone needs to perform this. So that way, everyone's acts of worship are properly maintained. Okay?
And
So,
in the Deen, one Shakila, I just wanted to point out another thing for our benefit. That in the Deen, whenever Allah Subhanahu wa Taala and His Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam give an order, you must follow it, right? But when they give a prohibition, when they prohibit something, you must stay away from it as much as possible, and you must stay away from it completely. Meaning, it's more important to stay away from the prohibited things, from the forbidden things, from a prohibition, than to do even what they told you to do. When you're told to do something, do it as much as you can. When they prohibit you, fantahu, completely stop. So about this, right, the timing, we find that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, very interestingly, he used both words. In some hadith, he says, Sumu li ru'yatihi, fast when you see the moon. And another hadith from Bukhari Sharif, from pretty much the most authentic chains of narration on the face of the earth. Meaning, if there's anything that we're sure that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said for 100% sure, then these are these words. These are those words that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said for 100% sure, without any difference of opinion across the board. He said, "La tasumu hatta tarawul hilal." Do not fast until you see the moon. Until you see. See is the word used here. until you see the moon. That really goes to tell you that this is such an order from Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that there's no compromise in it. He told us the prohibition, and he told us the affirmative as well, order to do it as well. La tasumu, don't fast until you see the moon, and sumu liru'yati, and fast when you see the moon. Both of these things, I think that just goes to show you how important this is, and how strongly related it is to our fast and other such ibadat.
Jazakallah Mufti Sab. MashaAllah. And we also have Mullah Idris as well. Mufti Idris Sab, if he would like to, inshallah, add in or to, inshallah, speak about another issue, inshallah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. So mashallah, Mufti Burhan and Mufti Maulana Shakil have kicked off this program in a very nice way. What I would like to add, something that will be alluded to later, is that we have the lunar calendar and the solar calendar. And the lunar calendar, as the scholars have mentioned, is used for our ibadat, for the calculating the months. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ عِدَّةَ الشُّهُورِ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ 12 شَهْرًا فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. The number of months according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are 12, and this is in the book of Allah according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the day of the creation of the skies and the earth. And the solar calendar, as the scholars mention, is used for our worldly events, for our planning, for the seasons, etc. And the wisdom behind this actually is that the ibadat, which, we are slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is our creator. We have to do as He says, when He says, how He says, whenever He says. وَرَبُّكَ يَخْلُقُ مَا يَشَاءُ وَيَخْتَارُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your creator, and He chooses. He chooses some people among others, and He makes them prophets. He chooses some places among other places, and He gives them more virtue. And He chooses some times over other times, and He makes them more virtuous. And He stipulates certain actions during that time. So these things are related to the lunar calendar, and the lunar calendar is independent of the seasons in terms of summer, winter. So normally when you and I would like to plan our events, we would like to plan it according to the season: summer vacation, winter. If I want to, harvest my crops, I don't want to be going for Hajj during that time. If I want to fast in Ramadan, if I ask anyone, if I give you the choice when Ramadan should be, you will say that it should be in the winter when the fasts are cool and when the fasts are short. But this is not the case. We have not been left to our own discretion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to follow the lunar calendar. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in this ayah, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ وَالْحَجِّ. One of the things that is interesting about this ayah, the scholars mention, is that the Sahaba asked Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So they had a complete desire and a talab to learn about the Deen from the correct sources. So they asked Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam about the hilal, about the crescents, it's plural. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was commanded to answer them that these are indicative of they are indicative of the time of the months, linnas, for the people, for all of people. So the word annas is jama, it's plural. Anyone living anywhere with any level of education, whether male or female, should be able to find out these timings based on the crescents. And then wal Hajj. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to all the months together in general, which includes the month of Ramadan, and then He mentions the month of Hajj in specific. This is dhikrul khas ba'd al-'am, mentioning something specific after something general, because Hajj, as Maulana Shakil mentioned, this indicates the end of the year, and this is also one of the greatest months of the year because of the Hajj. So anyone, and actually going back to the concept of using the solar calendar for your worldly events, there were nations in the past who engaged in certain actions where they would change the months of the ibadat and the duration, the timings of the ibadat to match their desires. Thus, they wanted, let's say, Hajj to fall in the summer, when they could conduct their business, when the businessmen and the caravans would come to Mecca. So if the Hajj falls in the summer, then they can sell their harvest, they can sell their crops, they can do their business. So they engaged in this concept. It's called, as the Quran refers to it, as nasi. إنما النسيء زيادة في الكفر. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions intercalation. They would add different ways. Some of them would add 10 days after every 3 years. Some of them would add 1 month. And actually, I asked one of my Jewish acquaintances. And even till today, they engage in this act of changing their calendar in order to match their events, their religious events with the seasons. So, and actually one of the reasons the scholars mentioned that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the first year Hajj was made obligatory, he sent Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu for Hajj. He didn't go. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was Amir al-Hajj. So one of the wisdoms for that was to correct the calendar, because the Hajj had fallen on the wrong time in that year when Hajj was made fard. So the scholars mentioned that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu went to show the correct time of Hajj, and then the next year Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went for Hajj. So as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ وَالْحَجِّ. This verse says that everyone is able to find out times of worship through the moon, because they are ibadat, and you need to know them wherever you are, whoever you may be. And this can only be true if sighting the moon is the standard, because not everyone has the information or expertise to calculate or to find out in any other way. So as the scholars mentioned, in anything, we have to see what was the practice of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the Sahaba and the Khulafa al-Rashideen and the scholars who came after. So in the next few slides, inshallah, will be, yes, Mufti Burhan?
Yeah, so from what we understand from what Mufti you were just saying, that historically there were people who tried to intervene with the natural system of Allah and the commandments that He gave in relation to them, but to merely to gain some personal benefit or some material, worldly benefit out of it. And what happened to them? Allah mentions right in the beginning of the Quran in Surah Fatiha that we ask Allah's protection from becoming al-maghdub and al-dhalin, those whom Allah is displeased upon, and those who have gone astray. And a part of that, like Mufti said in Surah Tawbah, Allah adds to one of those offenses that they committed was that إِنَّمَا النَّسِيءُ زِيَادَةٌ فِي الْكُفْرِ. Part of their way of disbelieving or rejecting the commandments of Allah was to play with the calendar to make it convenient for themselves. It's so very relevant to where we are. It's so very relevant. It's amazing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put this the way it is, and we understand that we cannot choose. Allah wants us to fast in the summertime with 15-hour, 17-hour fast, and in the winter time with 9-hour and 10-hour, 11-hour fast. And then, mind you, wherever we are in the world, there's going to have some level of difference in that, some degree of difference in the timing. But Allah wants us to fast in the summer, and Allah wants us to fast in the winter. Wouldn't it be more convenient if we just chose to fast on in the winter time, right? Just like we say that in the Ramadan, sorry, Jumu'ah is on Friday, but in USA, our work days are from Monday to Friday. So wouldn't it be just convenient if we all got together on Sunday and we prayed Jumu'ah, like instead of 2 rakat, we prayed like 20 rakat, instead of like 10-minute khutbah, the Imam gave like 2-hour khutbah. We'll spend half the day in the masjid. The same way we would reject that, we would think it's a preposterous idea. The same reason we should reject any kind of alteration, any kind of tahrif to our deen in this matter. If we can't pray Jumu'ah on Sunday, we can't just choose what day our Ramadan is going to begin and what day our Eid is going to be without the ahkam of Allah. I mean, if someone's going to discard, they're going to discard everything. But in reality, we're bound to the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether we get them or not. It's good if we understand them. We're trying to understand them today, but that's not the reason we follow them. We follow them because Allah said so.
So moving on, Jazakallah khairan, Mufti Burhan. Let's go, as Maulana Shakil said, we're establishing this issue ground up. So we've mentioned some historical points, some intellectual points. Now let's look into the statements and practices of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Sahaba, and the scholars. So this is a famous hadith that we all have heard of, in which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, صوموا لرؤيته وأفطروا لرؤيته فإن غم عليكم فأكملوا العدة 30. This hadith comes in many books in different wordings that are all give the same message, similar wordings in Bukhari, Muslim, and Nasa'i, and other books of hadith, in which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam clearly, explicitly said, fast according to its sighting, and break your fast according to its sighting. And if it is cloudy, you can complete cloudy, then you complete the 30 days. So this is a clear, explicit ruling of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that is clear, and as is a principle of usul al-fiqh, and also a rational principle, is that when someone commands you to do something, when it's possible to do it, the literal meaning, you do it, and that is what the goal and the maqsad of that statement is. So here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is commanding us to look for the moon with your eye and then fast.
Mufti
So
Idris, I just wanted to
yes,
jump in here, and
yeah.
don't mind me. I'll be jumping in,
No,
in and
no.
out, inshallah.
One thing you didn't mention in the beginning, Mufti Burhan, is that this is a panel discussion. So
Right.
we were all going to jump into each other, although we're
So
states apart, but we're together. Yeah.
or together, mind and heart.
Burhan is always going to jump in there,
Yeah.
Mashallah.
mashallah.
So just go if we go back and let the brothers and sisters see the hadith one more time in the back, right? There's a slide behind that. The wording of the hadith is very particular here. One thing is it says sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi is the order, right? But then what happens if you can't see it? That's the obvious question. It makes perfect sense that we're supposed to cite it, if we're supposed to try to cite it, but what if we don't see it? The next part of the hadith really answers this whole calculation business for us. It says that فَإِنْ غُمَّ عَلَيْكُمْ, and the ghumma, for those of us who understand Arabic or learn some Arabic, this is in the passive form of the word. We call that majhul. That means if it is obscured to you, if it is made unclear to you, if it is made cloudy upon you, meaning the moon is there behind the clouds. The moon is there, but it is not shown to you. What should you do? This solves the whole problem. That if you can see it, it's behind the clouds. It's not that if we got on a helicopter behind above the clouds and we were to see it. We're not responsible for that. Well, we're responsible for looking for the moon. If we don't see the moon, we're supposed to فَأَكْمِلُوا عِدَّةَ شَعْبَانَ 30. We're supposed to complete Sha'ban as 30 and the fast the next day. And just if you're wondering, for those of us who are listening, if you're wondering that if you're wondering that, what about what happens if the moon is there, and we're not able to cite it, but now what do we do about the next month after that? Well, listen, the month is going to be, you're only going to get the right day of Sha'ban. You're only going to get the right day of Sha'ban if you do the right day of
Rajab.
of Rajab. If you do the right day of you get the right day of Rajab. If you do the right day of Rabiul Thani, etc., etc. Meaning moon sighting. In order to get our Ramadan right, we have to get Sha'ban right. In order to get Sha'ban right, we have to get Rajab right. In order to get Rajab, so etc., etc. This is important for us to understand. It's not beyond the scope of the Quran and Hadith to understand the thoughts. And I really, really feel bad that people, that some of us, we think this way, that maybe we've out-thought Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Na'udhu billah, na'udhu billah. We think we're smarter, or we have such things that Allah and His Rasul didn't understand when they revealed this, when they brought this deen. Like, they didn't know that we'd be sitting on the other side of the world in America in our cosmopolitan, busy lives, where we need to schedule out every single moment so we can go and spend more time on social media. I guess that's what we do, right? We just calculate all of our schedules so we can waste more time later. But well, with all that aside, my point is, if we think that Allah and His Rasul didn't think this through, we're wrong. Because Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam clearly tell us that if it's not shown to you, if it's obscure to you, it's there in the sky. You don't have to go look for go calculate it. All you have to do, complete Shaban 30 and then go on.
And this is very important, by the way, Mufti Sahib. You mentioned that it's a prophetic injunction. The Prophet ﷺ makes it very clear that there is a obviously, what do these visibility curves do? They tell you the possibility of the moon being able to be seen, right? So that's the idea behind it. So, and this is a big question that people need to ask themselves, is that if it is the 29th, right, of Sha'ban, for example, and the visibility curves, they tell you that it is probable to see the moon on the 29th, but in your area it's cloudy. In your area it's cloudy, right? So this is a big question. So unfortunately, because people who follow just direct what the calculations would say, they would say that, okay, since it's, since it's the 29th and the moon can be seen, we're going to start Ramadan from tonight. But whereas it was cloudy in the area, so actually the hadith of the Prophet is completely negated. This hadith is completely it's completely lost. The meaning of it, the Prophet makes it very clear that you're supposed to fast according to the sighting, and then if it's cloudy on you, then finish 30 days. So when they say that, no, the visibility probability is there, so then, you know what, we're just going to start fasting anyways, they legitimately just negated the Prophet's hadith here. So, again, exactly what you mentioned, the Prophet made sure to inform the Ummah for 1400 years how to deal with every single one of the problems with moon sighting.
Yeah, and it's also important because one of the key reasons, or one of the key explanations that people who favor calculation give, is that the month starts when at the birth of the moon, and not the sighting of the moon. Whereas this hadith explicitly says لِرُؤْيَتِهِ, and even though the moon may be born, but you cannot see it, then you complete 30 days.
Mufti, some people like to play with words, and some people like to play with words. They said that it's kind of off topic, but so someone said that Bill Clinton had used he said the definition of am or is, I think he said that the definition of is, if it is what it is, and he went down and had a whole little talk about the definition of is. The objective was something else, maybe. So some people like to play with their words just like that. They say that the word ru'ya, they say that the word ru'ya is supposed to mean sighting with the heart, or supposed to mean sighting with the brain, or supposed to mean some kind of calculation that we do, like some kind of insight. The word ru'ya is absolutely explicit in Arabic for those of us who understand, and those of us who don't, you can just simply look up any kind of dictionary. And we're telling you from a scholar's point of view that ru'ya is ru'ya with the eye. There is no scope for us to think any further about what ru'ya means. That's just like saying that Allah Ta'ala said, when the sun rises, then you pray, when the dawn happens, you pray Fajr. And we're trying to now say, well, the metaphoric meaning of dawn is XYZ. That's just playing with the Deen of Allah.
So yeah, you're not going to really see Allah.
Okay, Bismillah, let's continue, inshallah. So now, as we mentioned, this is the statement, the practice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the statement and practice of the Khulafa ur-Rashidun, and this has been the practice of the Ummah for the last 1400 years. Yani, to start all the months, Ramadan, Hijri, all the months, at the sighting of the moon. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, لَن تَجْتَمِعَ أُمَّتِي عَلَى الضَّلَالَةِ أو كما قال sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that my ummah will not gather together upon something that is incorrect, because that is what the argument is given, that this issue is, it's not such a big issue. We don't really need to sight the moon. It's not such a big issue. You can also start the months by calculation. But the entire ummah has been doing this for 1400 years. Among them, giants, ulama. Let's go over some of their statements. Let's start with the four madahib. What do the scholars of the four madahib say? First, the Hanafi madhab. Ibn Abidin, one of the famous jurists and scholars of the Hanafi madhab, he said, and there's no regard given to the opinions of the astronomers and the obligation of fasting on the general people. Although astronomers may be there, they may be experts opining, but no regard is given to their opinions. Rather, you have to cite the moon. Mi'raj ad-Diraya states, whoever refers to their statements has opposed Ijma. He says in another Ijma, the consensus, and inshallah there will be more discussion on this later. He says in another place that Imams of the four madhahib have been clear that this is the correct opinion, that there is no regard for the statements of astronomers. So this is the stance of the Hanafi madhab. What does the Maliki madhab say? The establishment of the crescent cannot be through any astronomer's calculations or the lunar phases, according to the Mashhur madhab's opinion. Reference Ash-Sharh al-Kabir. The Shafi'i madhab from Al-Majmu', as for calculations, it is not obligated, meaning fasting, without any difference of opinion between our scholars. So basically he claims Ijma' even within the Shafi'i madhab. Hanbali madhab, Whoever fasts based on calculations and astronomy has fasted without any reliable Shari'i evidence. In other words, he has not no evidence to start his fast because he has not cited the moon. Rather, he has followed calculation and astronomy. Now, Maulana Shakil, I have a question to ask you. Can fundamental acts of ibadah be changed for different countries or when we have more education?
Uh, Jazakallah Mufti Saab. And I just wanted to clarify that this has been the stance of the Ummah for 1400 years. All these four great schools of thought, the central schools of thought in our Ummah have agreed on this issue. And so for us to not to, and this is the thing, you look at the Quran, you look at the Hadith, you're not going to find the evidence that people are looking for calculations. And that's the thing. The Hadith are very explicit about sighting the moon. Even if there's a possibility of sighting of seeing the moon, there's a visibility curve. Even then, the Prophet said, if you can't see it, then just complete 30 days. And so this idea that the ibadah has to be the same throughout the world, that the ibadah has to be the same throughout the world. It can't be that the fact that when we have more education, or the fact that one country, okay, now we have calculation, now we can do a different type of ibadah. You know, if a person were to start to claim that, you know, I can make wudu and tayammum, oh, I have a third way, I have another way of purifying my body, I don't need to use water anymore, you know? And so then
Dry
they'll say,
cleaning.
okay, yeah, so
We'll
I'll
do
start,
dry cleaning one.
yeah, they'll do dry cleaning or something like that. And so they say, look at that. Now I can start praying. Everyone would immediately dismiss it because we'll say the condition of prayer is that you have to be pure before it. And the way to become pure is the way that the Quran and Sunnah have identified or clarified it. They said you have to wash certain body parts. So the same way it happens for moon sighting. The fact is, the Prophet made it clear. The condition of starting Ramadan has to be done to one of these methods. Either the 29th you see it, or either on the 30th you complete the month. That's the only two ways you have here. And so when people start to argue this, they're actually changing or demonstrating that we have a superior or another way of doing ibadah, which is a different way from the entire world. And this is very dangerous. This is what our scholars have identified from the beginning, which is why precisely they said you cannot follow astronomers, because astronomers are a small subset of the community. And because not everyone has access to what they have access to, it'll be relying on a method in which the entire world cannot benefit from. So to say that astronomers have a different deen is to elevate them above the ranks of others. And so inshallah we'll continue from there where Mufti Idris has left off. And we find this again from
One
Imam.
thing, Mona Shakil,
Go ahead.
I wanted to add in that two things. One thing, that we shouldn't think that there were no such educated people in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Even among the Sahaba, there were those who were well educated. They were well grounded in their science and in the natural sciences, and people who were able to do calculations. Mind you, it's not rocket science. Calculations are not rocket science.
No, not at
They're
all.
mathematical. Yeah, they're mathematical tables. If you pretty much, today you could YouTube everything. You could probably find out how to do this very
Yeah,
easily
yourself.
yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, my point is, it wasn't that complicated that no one would be able to do it. But in spite of that, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam categorically rejected the way of calculation for this ummah,
Yeah.
for our fasting. Number one. Number two, that uh, among wherever I said what I said before, wherever needed, the Deen told us, the Sharia told us, go and use the calculations when needed. For what? For our miraf, like I said, example. We're supposed to use that. We're supposed to use it for our inheritance shares. Now, if the Deen, if the Sharia is telling us to use our mathematical principles for our inheritance shares, but explicitly tells us not to use it for our fasting and for our month, then there must be something else in there that we're not getting. And it's coming up, I think, Mawlan Shakil, that can we even accurately calculate it? you know and to
Yeah.
think that we are more educated than the people before, we should know that the science and the math that we follow today pretty much are all based off of people from thousands of years ago. And as Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam walked in the face of the earth by his blessed feet, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had people calculating the month right there in Medina, or right by Medina, not too far away. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam could have said, "Yeah, we can follow that too," or he could even have said, "This is better to follow." No, no, he says, "Don't do that. That's not our way. That's the way of someone else. That's not the Muslim way."
And I find it so comical. Again, we try to be as objective as we can, but something that's so hilarious to me is that when people start saying that, oh yeah, Muslims are so advanced in astronomy. They were the ones leading the field. We have so many landmarks on the moon named after Muslims. This is named after Muslims. That's named after Muslims. And then they say, but they didn't understand how to cite the, to calculate the visibility charts and things like that. No, they didn't know those things. La ilaha illallah, the Ummah had an understanding of this. This is actually what Imam Jassas, rahimahullah, which is a very early scholar back in the 300s, he passed away 370. He actually says this about it. He says that the astronomers can calculate the manazim, the mansions of the moon, the phases of the moon. They know this stuff. And then he was explaining this hadith, the hadith فَإِنْ غُمَّ عَلَيْكُمْ فَقَدُرُونَ, that if it's cloudy on you, then estimate it, or some people translate it as calculated. He says that some people have tried to interpret it as go to astronomers, and he goes and says, أما التأويل الأول فساقط الاعتبار لا محالة لإجابة الرجوع إلى قول المنجمين ومن تعاطى معرفة منازل القمر ومواضعه. He says, as for the first interpretation, assuming that the moon to be sighted behind the clouds, he says, is to drop without a doubt, because it requires consulting the astronomers and whoever has recognition about the phases of the moon and its positions. This is in contrast to the speech of Allah, which says, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ اللَّهِ. They ask you concerning the crescents. قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ وَالْحَجِّ. It is a place of determining time for people and Hajj. So he connected the rule with the sighting of the crescent, not with possibilities. People are always saying that there's possibility of moon being sighted. It hasn't literally been sighted. And so this is one of the dalil that he brings, Imam Jassas rahimahullah ta'ala, to show this point.
Just the word hilal, right, Mawlana Shakil? Just
Yeah.
the word hilal, it's from the root word halla yahillu, that they used to scream out when a person sighted the moon. They would yell out that, look, the hilal. He would yell out, because he used to yell out at it. They start calling it the hilal, the thing that person sights, and out of excitement he yells, he screams, he exclaims that this is the moon, this is the moon. This just goes to show you, for more linguistic proof, that in of itself the hilal is something to be sighted by the eye, and something to be shared amongst the people like this, in such a way that people can hear, can say that, yes, I saw the moon.
Yeah, and Mufti Sahib, mashallah, Allah reward you. Like really, like subhanallah, it just, and if anyone were to say that Muslims they were unaware and things like that, you see Imam Jassas rahimahullah ta'ala, like before the Gregorian calendar, the calendar that we're used to, the solar calendar we're used to, what calendar were people using, Like what did people think they were doing? They clearly had the lunar calendar. This was the standard for the Jews, it was a standard for the Christians, it was a standard for pre-modern Arabs, right? They were all using the lunar calendar. You're telling us that they weren't accurately using it. They didn't know how to use it. They didn't understand. We are so distant from the stars and from the heavens. They know the constellations in and out. They are looking for sailors, for so many things they need for the world, for harvest. They have so much of a usage for this, a utility for it. And for some reason, we're supposed to accept the fact that, oh no, they didn't know how or when to identify where the moon could be sighted or not sighted. It's very sad that people would think that about them. And so, if inshallah, we'll keep moving forward. And if Mufti Idris, please, if you have anything to share, alhamdulillah, we can also benefit from yourself as well. So what we find is that the four schools of thought have agreed on this issue. It's an ijma'i issue. It's something which is consensus. And so people often have this claim. You might hear this wherever you might be going on YouTube or whatever. You'll see that some people will say, no, there are scholars who have disagreed. And so how could it be ijma'? How can this be ijma' when some scholars have disagreed? And I think this is a misconception. People don't seem to understand this. We'll make it clear that these opinions that people keep presenting and saying that these are mainstream Islam or standard Islam, they're shadh. Shadh meaning something which is divergent, anomalous, which is a bizarre ruling because they oppose the Quran and the Sunnah and the Ijma. You see clearly from the Quran, which says that for all of mankind, they need to be able to sight the moon. So moon sighting is the default. It is the principle. There's no way around it. The Prophet said you have to sight it with your eyes, as Mufti Burhan has just mentioned, that the hilal means I see it. You shout out in happiness and joy that you've seen it. It's all by the eyes, the ru'ya. It has to be done according to that. So whenever scholars, you find certain people who identify maybe 3 or 4 scholars, Abdullah ibn Mutarrif ibn Shikhir, you're going to hear like big names, and sometimes we get intimidated, like, oh man, these are big ulama. Allama Subki, rahimahullah ta'ala. These are great. They're really, without a doubt, they're great ulama.
Mind you, Mawlana Shakil, it's about I think we counted down to 5 in the history of millions and
1400,
millions and
yeah.
billions of scholars, millions of scholars. There's 5 who are documented of even saying anything close to this. And by the way, it's coming forward, but by the way, they didn't say what these people today are saying, that you should it's a blanket fatwa that you should be using calculation all the time. We'll see just right now what they said. But even those five, out of them, three or four of them are disqualified from what these people say, because they don't even say anything like that. Even the one or two that resemble what they're saying, that they don't give a blanket fatwa like that. And this we're talking about out of millions of scholars, 1400 years of our scholarly heritage, our Islamic knowledge heritage. We're just throwing aside because some people are misquoting five scholars.
Yeah, and also, this is unfortunately kind of a practice that some people bring to the table, where they have a preconceived notion, they have some idea, a modernist idea, some approach they have, and they want to justify it. So they will then quote or misquote individual scholars from our history, and we find this throughout. There are many people who are claiming things about Hazrat Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, that na'udhu he wasn't listed to the race of the heavens, and they quote these one or two opinions out of context from our ulama, and they oppose ijma, and they say, look, this opinion also exists. So subhanallah, this amazing statement, very yani warning from Imam al-Awza'i, who was a great scholar. He was a contemporary of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayh, who said, man akhadha bi nawadir al-ulama kharaja an al-Islam, that whoever takes from anomalous rulings of scholars has left the fold of Islam. So this is very, very dangerous. And of course, as we mentioned, ijma is not negated through one or two scholars. So just because one or two scholars, three, as Mufti Burhan said, out of the millions, 3 or 4 scholars have stated something, it doesn't mean ijma is not negated. And ijma is one of the sources of our sharia.
I think we can benefit from what the definition of ijma, right? The definition of ijma is a consensus. It's linguistically we're saying this word over and over just to keep our brothers and sisters in the loop, that ijma is a source of the Deen, a source of the knowledge of the Deen. The Quran, after the Quran, after the Hadith, it comes the time for ijma. And ijma, we start from the ijma of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, whatever they were consensus upon. These people were not going to budge for the Deen. They would give their lives, but they wouldn't budge for the Deen. So if we find something that they're all agreed upon, they cannot be intimidated by anyone to change their Deen. If they're agreed upon unanimously, that means that is al-haqq al-mubin. That is the Deen. And whatever we stray away from that is merely leading ourselves astray. So when we say ijma, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum unanimously did this. And not only that, the generations and generations after, they were consensus upon this. That's what ijma means.
Well, another point I'd like to add here. Another point I'd like to add here is that this ijma was also through independent investigation and research. So let's say some ulama living in Khurasan, some living in Kufa, some living in Basra, some living in Hijaz, some ma wara al-Nahr. There is no social media, no communication amongst one another. They each came to the same conclusion. That's important to note, because nowadays, because of social media, there's a false sense of ijma that is created. One or two people, they do some sort of rap-shoddy research, and then they make some claims, and they back it with some stuff. And then now many people, because of social media, because of being influenced, or because of not being trained themselves, they follow suit. And then, people say, oh, look, everyone is doing it. That organization is doing it. He's doing it. So this false sense of ijma is claimed today, because this research, this ijma is not independently done. It is not done independently. Rather, it is a false sense of ijma.
Yeah, and that's very, very important to mention. Unfortunately, because we think that, they're all communicating with one another. They weren't. They were across so many areas and regions, and then they came to this same idea or agreement. And along with the fact that they knew how to calculate, they knew astronomy. We have to make that clear. They were very well aware of science. We never, again, Mufti Burhan in the beginning clarified it very beautifully, and he said that Muslims have always, we've always used calculation and mathematics and science and these types of things, and Muslims are always at the forefront of these things. No one ever who could deny that. But the thing is that scholars have, with all of this in mind, they kept this, that the Deen and Sharia has to be equal and even for everyone all over the world. And so because of that, they made the standard, or they understood that the standard from the Prophet ﷺ is moonsighting. And so we can't, after you have this much ijma, for someone to say afterwards that there's another opinion, the only thing you could say is that opinion is rejected. Okay. And so again, this is Imam Tahawi rahimahullah. He explains the issue of calculations, which is basically similar to that. In order to just kind of like flesh out this discussion about ijma', find Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah that he opposed calculations in many places in his fatwa, clearly stating that it goes against ijma'. Imam Shawkani rahimahullah from the later generations, he also in his Nailul Awtar, which is a magnificent book about fiqh, in there he also explains how this is also against ijma' as well. We find Sheikh Abdul Rahim Tawfiq, he writes in his book, and where he explains some of the strange opinions of Dr. Qaddawi. He says the four madhahib are in agreement and consensus that taking the opinions of astronomers is invalid, and that Imam Subki rahimahullah, who endorsed calculations from the Shafi'i scholars, had opposed the majority of the Muslims, which later day scholars from his madhab had refuted him afterwards. So we're finding this across the board. And we see this within their own, some people often quote Sheikh, you might hear this name, Ibn Daqiq al-Eid. They said that he himself endorsed calculations. It's not the case. And I think Mufti Burhan really he highlighted that, or he indicated towards it, that he said that people take their fatwas out of context. And Mufti Idris also said the same. People take it out of context, or they don't understand what these scholars have actually written. You can see here in his Ihkam al-Ahkam, he says, I say it is not permissible to depend on calculations in regard to fasting through the separation of the conjunction of the moon and sun upon what the astronomers opine, advancing the month through calculations by 1 or 2 days over the actual sighting. This is surely construing a cause that Allah has not made permissible. You can see clearly here what he said. Same thing with Subki rahimahullah ta'ala. When you hear Imam Subki's name, you think that, oh, he completely gave a general blanket ruling for allowing all calculations. It's not the case. He said there's a specific condition where I can say it's permissible for the astronomer himself, etc. No one you're going to find throughout the entire corpus of Islamic law, you're not going to find anyone who said as a blanket ruling that it's completely permissible to take calculations for every single month of every single year. No one's ever said anything like that.
How many Muslims are we in USA? Some say 5 million, some say 7 million, some say less, some say more. Whatever it is, say 5 million Muslims. And we're not concentrated in one area, even we're concentrated throughout the country. And it's a very vast and wide, country we have. Now, to say that to use the fatwa of any of these scholars, what they pretty much said was that if you're, let's say, in a place where there's no way you can sight the moon, that it's in such a difficult situation that it's not possible for you, is there any recourse to that? Is there any option for you to calculate or not? That was pretty much what these few 5 out of thousands and hundreds of thousands of ulama addressed. And even that they were rejected, even that they were going against the consensus of the ummah. But just if we were to go with their words for just a moment, they pretty much said that in such a situation there could be some scope of calculation. Whereas we're sitting in America with a beautiful, beautiful country from east to west that spans across 2,000 to 3,000 miles. It's impossible that the whole country is cloudy at once. If we cannot sight it in New York, we'll sight it in New Jersey. If not New Jersey, in Connecticut. If not in Connecticut, in a little bit further down in Pennsylvania and Massachusetts and out. My point is, we're going to be able to cite it somewhere. These fatwa that are even quoted, they're completely out of context. They're completely misquotes.
Yeah, and even in their own madhabs, you'll find Sheikh Muhammad Alish al-Maliki. He writes to conclude the existence of opinions inclining towards calculations within our schools and the Shafi'is. He's saying himself as a Maliki, and he's saying the Shafi'is. He says we can't deny that there are some scholars who did give this amongst those 5 scholars who gave the opinion. He says rather we acknowledge them in both our schools, but they are anomalous. He says they are shadh. They are not rulings which are credible and which can be taken or applied. We find the same exact thing mentioned by Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi. He writes his famous Ahkam al-Quran. He himself said some of our companions, the Malikis, had slipped as well, and had narrated from Imam Shafi'i that he said calculations are relied upon. He said this is a atharatun la la'an laha. He said this is a slip that has no recovery whatsoever. So themselves, they say that these opinions are not opinions for people to follow. Jassas rahimullah, really he puts the nail in the coffin. He goes and says, the one who says we must regard the phases of the moon and the calculations of the astronomers have come out of the pale of the ruling of the Sharia. And this is not a place la yasughu fihi al-ijtihad. It's not a place where ijtihad can be performed. It's not a place where ijtihad is even suitable due to clear direction in the Quran, the explicit Sunnah, and the Ijma of the jurists against it. mind you, this much
You know,
evidence. Yeah, go ahead.
in modern day, modern day time, I think it was Sheikh bin Baz rahimahullah who said that person who goes try to stay takes calculation فقد استدرك على الله. Na'udhu billah, that he's trying to pretty much, in our language we say, pull a fast one over Allah. He's trying to go beyond the knowledge of Allah and say that he knows more, na'udhu billah, somehow. Those are very scary thoughts. That Allah Ta'ala said it this way, and I'm going to think of it the other way. Be it that a human being could make a human error in whatever opinion they had, the words of Allah and His Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam supersede all of that. And that is what is proven by the unanimous opinion of the scholars throughout generations and span of geographic space, that is uncompromised in this matter, uncompromising in this matter, absolutely. That the moon has to be sighted. There is no calculation that we can resort to to replace.
So, Maulana Shakil, with all that has been said till now, is this question on the screen, is it a trick question or what?
I'm just
Yeah.
making it clear, because again, we started from the ground up, and I want to make it clear to everyone, if you're coming in a little later. We said that we'll build the case from the beginning. We'll look at the Quran and Sunnah objectively and see what it says. And it says what it says, and the scholars have agreed, and for 1400 years, along with their study of astronomy, have understood that this is the reality of the ibadah of the month of Ramadan. It has to be done through moon sighting. So what is the opinion about calculations then? It is the fact that they are against Quran, Sunnah, and Ijma. Okay? They are against Quran, Sunnah, and Ijma. A few scholars have been quoted to support calculations. It looks credible to the untrained eye. You'll listen to a talk and be like, man, that was some great stuff. This guy quoted like 50 scholars, or 5 scholars rather. But these scholars have you've seen from their own schools, have said that these opinions are shadh. They're not credible. They're not acceptable because they oppose Quran and Sunnah. People can continue to quote, but every opinion in Deen is not a legitimate one. And you're going to get this. We see all these nonsense people these days, these FedEx muftis, right? That they just ship fatwas here and there, and they give you all these fatwas from different group books and things, and they sound very credible. They have their Monday night meetings and whatever, and the thing is that they'll quote these opinions and tell you they're real ones, but they're not. If you were to look at the Quran and Sunnah, what scholars have said about their own opinions, they would never ever accept them. So that's where we're at here with Idris. So mashallah, as we see here though, in terms of these scholars who have been quoted that have shown in support of calculations, did any of them ever give a blanket ruling on using calculations?
No, definitely not. And this is a closed shut case because, as we all learn, mashallah, the ulama are here, that the sources of Sharia are four: Quran, Hadith, Ijma, Qiyas, and or Ijtihad. And this has been proven through Quran, through Hadith, through Ijma. And we said the door of Ijtihad is closed, as we quoted the alim. So there are no more question that remains.
Some
Yani it's
people,
clear.
Sheikh Idris, some people they like to say that it wasn't, they like to use very technical words that maybe some of our brothers and sisters who are not so acquainted with the terminology of the sciences of the Deen, they may get they may slip on those things. But we should make it clear. So one person said that it's not a ijma that we have to follow the moon sighting. It's just a jumhur issue. They say jumhur means a majority. Ijma means a consensus. So we went and we checked the books on this. This is Mawsu'atul Ijma' fil Fiqh al-Islami by Ibn Hazm rahimahullah. Ibn Hazm was a Spanish scholar from Andalusia, and from our ilmi heritage, which we are very proud of, that came out of Europe. Ibn Hazm rahimahullah ta'ala, he has a compilation, an encyclopedia on Ijma' issues. And Ibn Taymiyyah al-Harrani rahimahullah ta'ala, the famous Hafiz Ibn Taymiyyah, he went and he even took this even further, and he checked this another few hundred years after Ibn Hazm rahimahullah, and he verified that that when the ummah ajma'u ala أن الكافة إذا أخبرت برؤية الهلال فالصيام بذلك واجب. And وقد أجمع العلماء على أن من أبصر الهلال وحده فعليه الصوم. That this issue is a matter of sighting the moon. This issue is a consensus matter. It's not a majority opinion matter. It's a consensus matter.
And you'll hear like people, for example, they'll bring this hadith. They'll say that, oh, but the Prophet said, alayhi salatu salam, that if it's cloudy on you, then faqduru, you should just calculate it, and they'll just take it and they'll run with it. So what's a good response to this hadith, if someone were to hear that?
So the hadith under question is shown on the slides right now. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, لا تصوموا حتى تروا الهلال ولا تفطروا حتى تروه فإن غمي عليكم فاقدروا له. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, do not fast until you see the crescent, and do not give up fasting till you see the crescent. But if the sky is overcast, if you cannot see it, then estimate. So this is a statement of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and the word used here is faqduru lah, which is ambiguous in the sense that it is explained by numerous other ahadith, numerous other clarifications coming directly from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I was counting about 3-4 times in Bukhari and about 6-7 times in the Sahih Muslim and other books. Similar words are used, but instead of faqduru lah, it says, then complete Sha'ban as 30 days. So that clearly explains this statement of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, al-hadithu yufassiru ba'duhu ba'da. One hadith, one statement of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is explaining another statement of himself. So this argument is not valid. It is not correct. And
what about
yeah.
Mufti, this what about the fact that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't just say these words? He showed us what these words meant.
Yeah.
He showed us what these words. The most important thing that we say, that we had a human Rasul. You know, the Mushrikeen of Makkah, they objected that why wasn't an angel sent down? They said that قُلْ لَوْ أَنَّ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَلَائِكَةٌ يَمْشُونَ مُطْمَئِنِّينَ لَنَزَّلْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَلَكًا رَسُولًا. If there were angels here and they were walking about the world, then we would send an angel messenger. But there are human beings on the face of the earth, ruling the earth, walking the earth. Thus, we send a human being to show what it's supposed to act like. That's why Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam didn't just say these words. He showed us. So Mufti, this in all of your study of, so you said Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, and then Sunan Tirmidhi, Sunan Nasai, Sunan Abu Dawud, Sunan and Ibn Majah, and all of these other books of Hadith that we study in our Alim course, and then we study forward, and we've studied for this topic as well. That is there anywhere where Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "Okay, let's calculate this month"?
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, definitely not.
Yeah, one of the interesting parts about Imam Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala's organization, as you can see the numbers on the side here, just to give you guys a little beneficial point here, is that 1906, 1907, right? So Imam Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, the commentator of Bukhari, Fathul Bari, he writes that this is a beautiful organization of Imam Bukhari, because he brings the one hadith which is ambiguous first, and then brings the hadith which clarifies it right after, so people can understand that this is the way the hadith is intended to be understood. So that's a beautiful understanding from this hadith. So exactly what Mufti Idris was highlighting, that one wording is ambiguous.
And also, well, Shakiri, this is Bukhari, also to quote from Muslim, book number 6, hadith number 2364. This hadith is mentioned. But if the weather is cloudy, then calculate it. The next hadith, hadith number 2365, if the weather is cloudy, calculate the months of Sha'ban and Shawwal as 30 days. The very next hadith, number 2367, then calculate 30 days for the month of Ramadan. So
all of these words, we want to remind you, right? All these words in Ghumma Alaykum and the Majhul. Another thing about it, for those of us who have some background in Arabic or want to learn some Arabic here, that the Majhul is in the place of what we call maf'ul, that it is something done upon. So, for example, I ate, or I was made to eat. Right, so I ate was active, I was made to eat was the passive, right? Someone else did it to me. Someone did it, it was done, meaning the moon is there, but it was by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obscured upon us. Maybe He wants us to fast one more day. Maybe He wants us to fast the next day after the day we want to fast. What difference does it really make? In all reality, we are bound servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He wants us to fast on Wednesday, we fast on Wednesday. He wants us to fast on Tuesday, we fast on Tuesday. What difference does it make? He is the one who obscured it to us. Why are we going out of our way to change that?
Yeah, subhanAllah. So Mufti Idris, is there do any modern scholars, because we always hear, like when we're just in our regular like study, maybe on YouTube or whatever, some guys would say that, oh yeah, many of the modern scholars, they all are coming on a consensus about calculations. Are there any modern scholars that disagree with calculations?
Just one quick thing, Mawlana Shakil. When we were studying, we were told, we were studying in our worldly, the secular studies, we were told that you can't even use Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is an open source encyclopedia, and even though it has all of the citations at the bottom, you're not allowed to use it for your research work. Now we hear that YouTube And Allama YouTube and Mufti Google is the ultimate source of our knowledge. That's where we do our research. Subhanallah.
Allah forgive us, man. It's
So,
difficult. Yeah.
so, yeah. So to answer your question, yes, there are, and there are a number of scholars that disagree. To enumerate them, to name them: Sheikh bin Baz, Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, Sheikh Mukhtar Maghroui, ranging from across the world, from different madaris, from different manahij. The Permanent Fiqh Council of Saudi Islamic Fiqh Academy.
This one really does
All
it.
of these.
If we can just read that one out. This one and the next one. I think
The Saudi one.
Yeah, I think this one really does it.
This is from Fatawa al-Lajna al-Da'ima, book number 10, page 107. From more recent scholarship, the al-Lajna al-Da'ima Permanent Fiqh Board of Saudiya has written, it is obligatory on Muslims to go to what Allah had stipulated for them on the tongue of His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to rely on the crescent sighting for fasting and breaking the fast. I mean, how much clearer can we get? And now in bold letters, it is akin to ijma' from the people of knowledge. So whoever goes against this and relies on the calculation, his opinion is anomalous, shadh, and not to be relied upon. And from the Fiqh Academy, Islamic Fiqh Academy, the Majma' Fiqh al-Islami convened on 1399 AH about the question of Singapore who started the Ramadan based on calculations. They came to the following resolution. Muslims in those areas where it is cloudy should follow those Muslim countries that follow physical sighting of the crescent, not calculations, in whatever form whatsoever.
So we're getting across the board. It's not just like an Indian issue. People think it's like a Desi issue or something. Allah forgive us. So I mean, for a person who says like, okay, so I get, so my YouTube studies have shown me something, and we're getting something else here. So since both sides disagree, what should I do? What should a person do? I think the answer is clear for everybody: is that they should follow Quran and Sunnah. That if you disagree about something, then revert back to Allah and His Messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam. So we follow Quran and Sunnah. We've shown you here, and the majority view. Again, we're calling majority, but we're saying it's a consensus issue. Follow the consensus of the scholars. There's no fear in that. There's no worry of that we're disobeying Allah and His Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. So we should adopt this view instead. Okay. So to move forward. Okay, so mashallah, what was the reason?
I think I should just jump in with one thing here, because I see a lot of brothers and sisters are asking about this, and we said we're gonna answer the question at the end, but I think this is related. When we say following the consensus of the scholars, we should know, keep in mind that our Deen doesn't go by voting. It doesn't go by like, let's take votes and we got 3 versus 4. Okay, the 4 is the majority opinion, dissenting opinion. They'll write their papers out, and that's not the way our Deen works. Our Deen works on the basis of the Quran and Sunnah. When something is not clear in the Quran and Sunnah, then we go to our next step, Ijma'. And then when it's not clear in Ijma', then we have ijtihad based on that matter. Here we have a matter that's mentioned in the Quran, that's mentioned clearly in the Hadith, and I say this again. The most authentic, strongest chains of narration leading up to Rasulullah that are existent on the face of the earth, they are all unanimously agreed upon. The words of Rasulullah that you have to sight the moon for your month. There's no difference in any of the ahadith. And if you understand this as well in more fiqh terminology, this we can say this is a tawatur of bil ma'na, we say. This is something that has been established by Rasulullah from Rasulullah in meaning, to be like an ayat of the Quran. And in fact, it's in the ayat of the Quran, like we say, قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ وَالْحَجِّ. Furthermore, it's in Hadith Sharif. Then Ijma is also there. And then on top of that, if we're going to now say that some scholars dissent, some scholars do this and the other thing, that's not how we do it. And the reason I'm saying is because people are saying that, people keep asking that, what about our local masjid? What if they're following calculations, or what if they're not doing moonsighting? They're just sitting back and waiting to import in some information from YouTube or something, or from a random website off the internet. Find out what some other country is doing. They don't want to go out and do the sunnah. What if we were just in an area where the masjid is doing that? We have to remember that we're not we don't follow a religion that goes by numbers. We follow a religion that goes by what is haqq and established from the dalail and proofs. Islam is unique in this way. There's no other religion that has such open access to knowledge. such open access to knowledge. And I'll say this with straight from the heart, that the tabi'een, rahimahumullah ta'ala, you will see historically, the biggest scholars of the tabi'een were children of former slaves that were not Arabs, even that were not necessarily part of the mainstream, demographic. Even they were children who were of the what was in that before pre-Islamic society considered to be like the untouchables almost. Na'udhu we don't have that in Islam, but before Islam, I'm saying that's how they used to be considered. But they became the leaders of the ummah. They became scholars. How? Because this knowledge is open to every single person. Only they have to go to the right source to get it. They can't just get off of YouTube. They have to get it from the right source. That's the point. But it's open to everyone. If you go to any other religion, either they go off of hearsay or they go off of whatever because so and so one human being person said so. No, we don't go off of that. We go off of what the Quran and Sunnah said, and then there's a consensus upon that as well. We don't have any room for doubt in this.
So true. And exactly the idea about like we're not against education at all. And so this question comes up is that, was it the fact that the Muslims were unable to calculate? Is that the reason why they weren't able to, that's why they rejected calculations? Or the fact that, they were against technology or science? Or some people have said even this, that our scholars didn't know the difference between astronomy and astrology, right? Was it the reason that this is why they were against calculations? And we'll find that the answer is a resounding no. It's not because of that at all. Muslims have always been great astronomers. There's a beautiful website on, if you look it up on Muslim Heritage, which talks about the number of craters which are named after Muslim astronomers, 24 craters or so, because of the fact that Muslim astronomers helped propel the discipline of astronomy into such a high degree. You have to understand there was a Jewish astronomer who accepted Islam. His name was, they are going to write it as Masalla. His name in Arabic is Masha Allah. Okay. And he has an entire plane that's named after him on the moon because of how many contributions he gave towards astronomy. We find a lot of, the Baytul Hikmah, in the time of the Abbasids, it was designed by Harun Rashid rahimahullah ta'ala, or in his time rather. And so they worked tirelessly to revive the Greek, Indian, and Iranian sciences, to help propel astronomy even further. So when people say this point about Muslims not knowing these things and things like that, I know we have to talk about the astrolabe, right? The astrolabe is it was
Shakil, sorry, I just actually we talked about Sheikh Google Mufti Wikipedia. Actually, one of the benefits we realize now, I just checked on Wikipedia about the history of astronomy, and it says that this is the oldest natural sciences, the oldest natural science on the face of the earth. And
you mean it hasn't developed somehow in the last 20 years or the last 15 years?
Mufti Burhan.
2006 is when it was discovered in USA. It was discovered in 2006.
No.
So you mean it was there in the time of Rasulullah and thousands of years before that too?
It was the time it was available. It was there in the time of the Chinese dynasties, the Gupta Empire, well before Rasulullah. And as a matter of fact, I've heard from one of our elders, one of our scholars say us waqt se ab tak is fan mein ratti barabar ka farak nahi aaya. That this science of calculating the phase of the moon in the last 1500 plus years, there has been no advancement. Yani, with the amount of accuracy that they were able to predict the phases and the birth of the moon 1500 years ago is the same as it is now.
And Sheikh Hamza Yusuf,
you've had to studied the natural sciences a bit, I think, for your own studies, right? So in that I think you can relate to this, that the natural sciences, the main discoveries that were there happened 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, or at least 1,000 years ago. Nothing happened in 2006. All of a sudden we changed in USA.
Yeah, subhanAllah. And like Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, by the way, Mufti Idris, what you mentioned, he said the same exact thing. It hasn't really been developed even further from what Muslims have already contributed to the field. It's only been a slight, here and there, developments here and there. Sheikh
By the way, my quote was from Hazrat, our elder Hazrat Mufti Nawal Rahman, Hafidhahullah, the head of Central Halal Committee. He stated this, that Ratti barabar ka bhi farak nahi aaya, 1500 saal se.
And Sheikh Nuh Hamim Keller, in his book of Pouring in a Storm, he speaks about how the qiblas that were designed by the masajid of Sahaba radiallahu anhum are so accurate. He said that you can't even turn a little bit, you can't even move your body a little bit. You'll find that even though they were hundreds and thousands of miles away when they established their masajid in Egypt and different areas, you'll find that the qibla was so accurate. You can't, they were really concerned about these things because they needed to understand which way to pray and what time of the month is it. These are important things about Islam, about practicing Deen.
So slowly go into this next matter that people ask about so much, Sheikh Shakil. One thing is if someone claimed somehow that anyone who uses a device or uses some sort of calculation to calculate the qibla direction, they should also very readily accept the calculation of the monthly Islamic month as well, of the monthly moon cycles. Well, we find that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they calculated the qibla very accurately, like what Mullah Shakil just said. They calculated the qibla very, very accurately, but yet they did never calculated the months. They never calculated the months. So to say that these people, na'udhu billah, were all ignorant, na'udhu billah, about this, it's horrendous to even think such words about the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, that they were ignorant, na'udhu billah, about this, about calculating the months. That is our own ignorance. That is our own stupidity. We're just shooting ourselves in the foot, because in reality, our elders, our predecessors, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum and beyond, if they could calculate the qibla so accurately, why can't they calculate the moon? Why didn't they calculate the moon? That's
Yeah.
my
But Mufti
question.
Burhan, that
So
claim is also irrational
yeah, well,
because we are commanded to face the qibla when praying salah. Well, whereas here we are commanded to sight the moon.
yeah, and
So
I would say maybe people are just unaware, and I'd rather not use the words like, because again, just people didn't know. Like about, for example, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah wrote in his fatwa that the Sahaba, there were some who knew how to calculate as well. Shaykh Idris al-Kandlawi rahmatullah alayhi, beautiful works he's written. He read some Sahaba knew how to calculate. So if this was a legal rationale, then there would be no reason to avoid calculations. They're all there. So, and I just want to make it clear about this visibility curves, because Muslims knew visibility curves. This is there's another beautiful book I can recommend for people, which is The Call of the Mu'adhin by David King. He's a non-Muslim who is so interested in Islamic sciences and Islamic astronomy. He's written massive books, 2 massive volumes about how Muslims calculated prayer times and all these different things, their contributions to astronomy. He has over 250 pages about moon sighting. Okay, it's amazing work. In there, he brings you this chart, the tables for determining the possibility of seeing the lunar crescent on the first evening of each civil month. You're going to see on the left-hand side here, all the way on the left, Hukm al-Ru'ya. He says here, Hukm al-Ru'ya. On the right side, you get the names of all the ahilla, all the months, Muharram, Rabiul Awal, Rabiul Thani, Jumadul Awal, Jumadul Thani. You can see that, right? Rajab, Sha'ban, Ramadan. And all the way on the left side, you see that it says that when it comes to the Ru'ya, Yara Ru'ya Zahiran. La yura, zahiran. It tells you the possibility of seeing it or not seeing it, and he tells you the different degrees and all these things. So when people claim this, I found it so disheartening to me, really, listening to these things that you see what people say about Muslims of the past. They were very well aware about all these sciences. They knew about visibility curves. They knew about where the moon could be, and they had this knowledge. But why
So
didn't
let
they
me ask
approve?
you a hard question, Sheikh
Yeah.
Shakil. Let me ask you a hard question. If we can calculate our prayer timings, why can't we discard our moon sighting? The prayer
Yeah,
timing versus the moon sighting. We
yeah.
can calculate for prayer time. Why can't we calculate for moon?
I think we'll jump to that section because alhamdulillah we had something on that as well. Is so the question about why don't we calculate prayer timings? So it's actually within the words themselves. Prayer timings and moon sightings. Prayer timings and moon sightings. What is the condition that we need so that way we can pray? We need to know the timing. Okay. What is the condition that we need to perform or practice or to start the month of Ramadan? We need the sighting, not the possibility of sighting. There are 2 different things here. When it comes to what the Prophet ﷺ commanded, he says that you have to pray the salah according to its time. And the Prophet ﷺ said you have to perform the month of Ramadan or practice the month of Ramadan according to its sighting, not the possibility of it. People misunderstand what a visibility curve is. It's not
One
telling you that.
one other quick thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
If we see in the wording of the hadith, nowhere does it say look at the sky when you see the sun is like when you see the sun is this and this and this, then you have to sight it this way. No, rather in those wordings of the hadith, you'll see when that happens, when the timing comes in, when the sun rises, when the sun
Re-
sets.
Rather,
right?
even in the Quran, أقم الصلاة لدلوك الشمس إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا. Each of them refers to references time.
Exactly.
The time happening. Whereas for moon sighting, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam doesn't say when the moon is born, or when the moon is visible, or when the moon is sightable. No, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says when you sight it. Otherwise, add a day and do the next day.
Mufti Buhan, I have
Very
a question
simple.
for you. If we follow this logic that people say, oh, if you follow calculations for salah, you have to follow for moon sighting as well. Well, if the sky is cloudy and we cannot sight the moon, although it is there, we have another command that we do, which is complete 30 days. But if we're supposed to look at the sun and the shadows for the salah, but the skies are cloudy, then what do we do?
We're supposed to not pray the Maghrib or the Asr? Pray it tomorrow, I guess. To make
No,
up,
that's
no?
not it. Yeah. Yeah. The Prophet tells you what to do. He tells you exactly what to do. You know, about the idea about the moon, and you know about
Sallallahu alayhi.
So
And the salahs repeat every day, 5 times a day, every single day. So let's say today is cloudy, yesterday wasn't cloudy. You know, we knew the timing from yesterday. It's repeating every single day, whereas the moon repeats only once a month.
Okay,
yeah.
so our beloved scholars, let's give our listeners a proper fiqh answer to why we cannot calculate our moon sighting, but we are allowed to calculate our prayer timings. What is the fiqh behind it, really? In short.
Yeah, so the fiqh answer in short is just what we call qiyas ma'al fariq, right? There's a mistake in the analogy here. We're trying to say, oh, if the prayer times are calculated, then why don't we calculate our months? Well, the prayer times are based on the sun, and the calendar is based off the moon. These are two different bodies, heavenly bodies. They don't work the same way. There's no way you can make a proper, in terms of analogy, this is not analogous at all. You can't say that you can compare this to that. It's like apples and oranges or something even more beyond that. So when it comes to what our scholars have understood, and this is not, I'm telling you, anything we're talking about here is from our ulama of the past. Imam Qarafi, in his beautiful book, he's a Maliki scholar of earlier times in the 600s or so. And so he speaks in his book Al-Furuq. He says that he asks a question about what is the difference between prayer timings, why we have a calendar for prayer timings, and we don't have a calendar for the moon sightings. He goes and says the same thing we just explained here. He says, on the other hand, in terms of case of prayer times in the bold here, he stipulates simply the entrance of the times. What Mufti Burhan and Mufti Idris was saying, it says that Allah Ta'ala said about the timing of the prayer, but the Nabi ﷺ didn't say the timing of the birth of the moon, the astronomical birth of the moon. It is about the sighting. Hence, we are able to determine them by any means possible. For instance, and then he explains that the Quran says about dulukus shams, it going down. And so there's a difference between the heavenly body being used. So a person cannot make this analogy here. Okay, and there are a lot of false analogies. You're going to hear a lot of stuff. People say, "Oh, Muslims, they changed their opinion when it came to loudspeakers or microphones or prayer time." It's like, all the stuff you hear, and a person who studied fiqh and deen, you're like, man, this doesn't even fit. This is again apples and oranges. They're not the same issues here. How could a person compare
So Shakir,
loudspeakers?
one quick thing, there's an idea in our deen that about making about an innovation that is for an objective that is already established in the deen, but to simplify it, or to for ease of it, or to accommodate it. For example, in our deen, we are told to do straighten the lines, to straighten the rows of the sufuf in salah. In order to do that, in the time of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what they did was they stood, and they actually, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by his own blessed hands, he would actually even touch sometimes the Sahaba to make sure that they're in line. Other times they would look in one side, and he would say that if someone shot an arrow, it would not hit anyone. We need it to be that straight. And then we know that Umar radiallahu anhu used to even have a stick which he used to go by, and he used to check that everyone's heels are aligned. Point is that that was an objective in the deen, to straighten the lines. Now we use lines on the carpet. We use lines on the carpet. So someone says, well, that's an innovation. That's not what we call a bid'ah. That's technically an innovation, yes, but that's not a bid'ah. A bid'ah is something that you make in the deen that did not exist in the deen, that was never there in the deen, or something that was already told for us to do in a particular way, and we're changing the deen. That's called the bid'ah. So in terms of the microphone, it is an objective of the deen to get the imam's voice to the back rows. It is an objective of the Deen to straighten the roads. It is an objective of the Deen to have the Muslims pray in time. And the Deen did not tell us particularly use the lines on the carpet or use a stick or use your hands. Did
Yeah.
not say use a mukabbir to say in the back, or did not say use they come early in the salah so you can hear the imam in the first row. The Deen did not specify how we're supposed to obtain or accomplish that objective.
It didn't say to
Rather,
drive to the masjid or take a motorcycle
exactly.
or a bicycle or walk.
So those are not bid'at. Those are good innovations. Those are good things that are additions to help accommodate and accomplish and establish goal of the Deen already. Whereas in terms of the moon sighting, explicitly Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us how we're supposed to do our month, how we're supposed to start our month. Now to change that is called a bid'ah. To
Yeah.
change it is called a bid'ah.
Yeah, it's like, for example, like a person would say that, oh, if the objective of wudu is just to become pure, right? Because this is the correct analogy here, wudu and tayammum. Person's like, all right, I have a new method now. I have this dry cleaning you can do on the body. So now my body will be dry clean. Now I'm completely pure. Would any scholar, any credible scholar with his name or his title, would he ever say that this is a valid way, that he didn't use water at all or didn't do tayammum? Like, what kind of nonsense is that? The same thing about the Prophet. Again, people conflate this umur adiyah and umur ta'abbudiyah. Like, there's things which are habitual or things related to habits, for example, prayer rows and things like that, which the Prophet left ambiguous and flexible for people. Just the objective is to straighten the row, like Mufti Burhan had mentioned. And things that are acts of worship, though, you don't have a say now. You don't have a say to say that, okay, the maqsad is this, the goal is this, so therefore I can change it now and I can do whatever I want. No, if there is wudu and tayammum, those are the only two valid ways of making sure a person can pray. Similarly, for the month of the moon, month of Ramadan, you have to either sight it on the 29th or you complete 30 days. Those are the two options you have here. This is the proper analogy that a person can actually make. Yeah, so mashallah, I think one of the things is that one brother asked this question about this fact that can we even trust these astronomers? And this is actually a really big question, and this is something that we have to make clear about everyone who's listening as well. Is that I want to make it clear about this idea of these calculations, because you feel like it's 100% definite. You feel like it's like it's a cut and finished issue. There's nothing else to say about it. But themselves, the astronomers themselves have a difference of opinion. They disagree about things. They have a different way of looking at it. They have different angles and degrees that they deal with, and when they calculate the visibility curves. So is it even possible to calculate the sighting of the moon? This is actually a section on the U.S. Go ahead.
No, go. I'll say it right after. Go ahead.
The U.S. Naval Observatory section for Muslims. They have a specific section, the U.S. Naval Observatory for Muslims. You can see it on their website. Right now it's down. I checked it yesterday. It'll be up. They are just making updates to it. So in there, they write, although the date and time of each new moon can be computed exactly, the visibility of the lunar crescent as a function of the moon's age, the time counted from the new moon, depends on many factors and cannot be predicted with certainty. I want everyone to check out this next part here. Some of the earliest reliable sightings of the crescent occur near elongations of around 10 degrees. 10 degrees, meaning the difference in terms of checking the angle in the versus the moon and the sun and the light that has to reflect off of it, right? Which they call the elongation. It says that the degree has to be around 10 degrees. What our Muslims normally do, if you're going to check anyone who declares, they'll say we declare it off of 8 degrees. The U.S. Naval Observatory is telling you that 10 degrees are probably the earliest that you can find. Our Muslims are using 8 degrees, okay? Simply specifying the age or elongation of the moon cannot tell the whole story. There's a lot more that's considered. And this is just to give you an idea about how much they have to think about before they can say that, yeah, this is definitively sure that you can actually identify or see the moon. So if this is what we're hearing about, right, that even themselves have disagreements and astronomers don't know if it's been observed or if it's possibly observed or not, how could a person start their act of ibadah on this type of doubt? How could a person...
Let's put it out there very clearly, Imam Shakil, let's put it out there very clearly. What today, the calculations that are out there today, that are available and that are used by certain people, they are based off of the birth of the moon. The pretty much the birth of the moon, when if you understand the phases of the moon, there's a point in when the moon is completely not visible. Okay, we call that a new moon that happens every approximately 28 to 29 days. And when that happens, that means the pretty much the moon is in the shadow of the earth, and it's not visible to us, in simple words, putting it in layman's words. Now, the new moon is called the muhaq. The muhaq has nothing to do with the hilal. In Arabic, you have different words for the different phases and stages of things. Like a date. In the dates, they have 8 different names for 8 different stages. Even for children, they have different names. And in English, we have that too, right? We have infants, we have adolescents, and beyond, right? It's just like that. But in Arabic is a much more rich language. So they have different names for different phases of the moon. The muhaq is that new moon that is not visible. After that, when the moon becomes visible, it's called the hilal. Now, what they're basing the calculations off is the new moon, whereas the base of our deen is the hilal. That's a very, very big difference because the new moon is not visible to anyone. The definition of it is not visible to anyone. And then the hilal is when it is old enough, big enough, visible enough to be visible to someone. Then we call that a hilal. The base of our deen throughout the Quran and Sunnah, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ صُومُوا لِرُؤْيَةِ الْهِلَالِ. Oh, hilal is the base of it all, not the new moon. Okay, that's one big problem. The other problem is the reason why they are so very off about these things is because they set their calculation criteria to be so low, or to be so I would like to say scientifically impossible for someone to be able to cite, that if indeed we were to go out to look to cite, it's impossible to cite that day, it's impossible to cite that night. Thus, you have a wrong date on the calendar that's printed and pre-calculated from before. Now, what I like to say is that if they were to try to calculate the visibility of the moon, some of the greatest scholars of astronomy, among them Muslim scholars as well, they say it is nearly impossible for us to accurately calculate the visibility of the moon. There are nearly 300 different factors that are involved, or more than even 300 different factors that are involved. And in reality, it is more of a practical thing than a theoretical idea of calculating on paper. Going back to that notion that our deen is not based for the elitist, it's not an elitist deen for the elite intellectuals who are able to read and write and who are able to calculate this so properly. Today, as the listeners are listening to us, and 3 of us or 4 of us are presenting, here we have about 100 people, out of which I would say maybe not even one of us has an upper level degree on astronomy that we can very easily sit down and calculate these things. So imagine if we were just one small community, 100 families as we are here. If we were to say the deen is based off of calculations, we'd have to go to someone who is outside of our group and go find someone who's an elite intellectual to find this, because our deen is universal, and because our deen is not based on this, we don't go off of this kind of elitist sense of calculations. We go off of this sighting of the moon. It's a practical idea. You can't calculate it properly.
Yeah, I hope inshallah, like especially everyone who's listening can see the case being made for why moon sighting has always been the official stance of the entire ummah, and how this calculation method is really a shadh and a weird innovation of our times. And I hope it's also made clear that that the idea that the ummah's towards this unification, like let's start moving towards this topic of unity. Like, because I see that many people might agree that okay, the default position is moon sighting, but we want to follow calculations because we want to get Eid off, you know, and we can't do it if we are always citing the moon, you know. New York can only give off this many days, whatever. People make this argument. So doesn't calculations provide us the opportunity to get holidays for Eid?
Okay, so let's talk about that. Here in New York, we had some efforts in one of our counties by by some of the very active scholars, to a very active imams of the community, to get the Ramadan sorry, to get the Eid vacation from the school board. And
Actually,
pretty
Mufti
much,
Burhan, actually, I was involved in this, so in Teaneck itself. So let me just share my experience.
yeah, go ahead.
In Teaneck, in New Jersey, in the Board of Education, they approved Eid holiday for the Muslims. And the Muslim community ran into some issues because the calendars are pre-printed before the school year starts, and they need an exact date. So the community, the masajid involved, they immediately concluded that we have to follow calculations without considering any other option. just because we need a preordained, pre-decided date. So Alhamdulillah, our elder Mufti Abdul Muqtadir and some others, we got together and we had a sit down with the commissioner of the Board of Education, and we educated him. We explained to him about the Sunnah, the concept of moon sighting, and he was very much amazed and very happy. And we told him that, look, we will give you the date based on the visibility curves, based on the correct probability. And if the date happens to be on the other day, yani the wrong day, then there's also a solution to that. Just give the students an excused absence, and don't schedule any examinations on that day. Don't give any difficult assignments on that date, that if the students were to miss it, he would miss out on a lot. So he was very open to this, and they agreed, and thus the program moved forward. So once you decide that this is the correct way, this is the Islamic way, this is what I want to follow, there are always solutions available.
You know, Sheikh Idris, Sheikh
Yeah.
Shakil and I grew up in New York. So you remember in September, school would start. Right away, school start right away. You'd have 3 days off. You have 2 weekends, one of which was a 4-day weekend, one of which was a 3-day weekend. Right, Sheikh Shakil?
Yeah.
It's one of the the pleasures of going to of being here in New York. So why was that? Because one weekend was Yom Kippur, and one day was Rosh Hashanah. So 2 days they give for Rosh Hashanah. And they always put that on Thursday, Friday, so you get a 4-day weekend. And Yom Kippur they give a Friday, you get 3 days. In 1 month, our Jewish community gets 3 days off, and we're very happy for them. It's very happy.
Yeah, we're happy.
They get
We
three
make
days off
kifayah.
for them. But I'll tell you, the schools that I went to and the schools that I'm sure you went to, Sheikh Shakil, I don't think there was a Jewish person in all of our school. And in New York, the population of Muslims, I think by now, is more than the population than the Jewish population. But yet they get 3 days off, and we're fretting to even ask for 2 days properly, and then we're fretting to even tell them that, listen, our religion is this, you're going to have to go by our religion. Then if we asked for 2 days off for Eid al-Fitr, that would be and Khair Eid al-Adha as well, but that would be the foolproof solution to it. Get two
Yeah.
days off, get the possibilities straight, and get 2 days for each one. Now, some of us, unfortunately, look, in New York, we are 10% of the population. That means 1 out of every 10 kids is in the school is a Muslim. And also, we should know that some schools, that's as a citywide demographic. In some parts of the city, some schools are 90% Muslim. 90% Muslim, I'm telling you. And I went to such a school where we were probably maybe 70% or 60% of the population was Muslim. So my point I would like to say is that if we are not going to stand up for our right, and we're going to change our deen to get a day off, we're not even appeasing anyone by it. I don't want to blame anyone for it. We're not even appeasing anyone by it. We're just too scared to ask at this point. But
Yeah.
given all of that situation, given all of that, if we're not willing to ask for 2 days each, and that's like too many days, we think, forget all of that. If we were to even give them a properly calculated calendar based on the estimated dates, we found that from CHC we've done that for at least one county here in New York, where they have literally taken from 2000 and what was it 2000 and 18 or 19 all the way to like 2035 or 2040 or something. We gave an entire calculated a possibility of when Eid is going to be, and we gave that to them based on the proper predictions that it may happen. And we gave also a little part with it that these could be different. It's not impossible, but if we change the criteria, it would at least have the correct day on it. And then if it's wrong, then we can do what Sheikh Idris said, Mufti Idris said. We can go to that. We can take that recourse as well if there is something wrong with that. But we can't change our deen. And interestingly enough, what they told us, they said that, listen, the school board does not determine your religious observation. The school board does not mean to determine it. Rather, we mean to give you when you say you are observing it. Well, here we are, the Muslims saying we have to set our Eid and change our moon sighting system because the school system doesn't want us to do it this way. Whereas they're saying we don't want you we don't want to dictate when your Eid is. So who are we appeasing to even? Who are we pleasing for that matter? We're not pleasing Allah for sure. That's
Yeah.
for
No,
sure.
no, Mufti Burhan, to add to that, we have precedent. We have a blueprint that is being set in the field of halal. And you, mashallah, are yourself are involved in this, where the school boards are working with the Muslim community to provide halal to the Muslim students.
Yeah.
So the same way we can do this with hilal.
That's very clever, mashallah. So I think a lot of the questions are coming up in the Q&A is always about this question about unity, you know? And I think, mashallah, I really want to hear your thoughts on this topic. Let me just kick it off with one of these things. Is that, you know, the funny part is that I think the people who wanted their intention of doing calculations back in 2006, if you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but in any case, one of their intentions was we want to unify people. But they actually created a third group and actually caused even more problems. And now we have even more controversy. So I find it really funny that their intention was something. May Allah Ta'ala, you know, Allah Ta'ala knows intentions and sincerity of people, but their niyyah was something, but something else came out instead, you know. So, but please, let's hear your thoughts about this question about unity.
Unity is addressing in the ayat that everyone gives about unity, that وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. This ayah has actually everything to do against what they are trying to prove about unity here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in this ayat that grab onto, hold onto the rope of Allah all together. Come to the deen of Allah and be together about it. If we are all together and we let go of the rope of Allah, we're holding on to someone else's rope, something else's, path, some other path in the path of Allah, then that's not unity. The unity in the Quran that we're talking about, that unity has to do with the rope of Allah, with the habl of Allah, and the tafsir is very clear about that. The Quran and Sunnah, the deen of Allah, the sharia of Allah. If we don't have the sharia of Allah in sight, and we're all one of our ustad, he says very nicely, that one of his ustad used to say that, listen, unity is a good thing. You're right about it. But if 10 if 10 burglars unified on burglarizing my house, that's not good for me, is it? 10 wrong people, they came on unity, they unified on doing the wrong thing, that doesn't give you any benefit. Unity is only beneficial when you hold on to the rope of Allah. Brothers and sisters, if we have unity and yet we all go against the deen of Allah, do you think if the people who are advocating calculations, and unfortunately, because it is a so much easier solution to everyone, seemingly to everyone, that is just an easy solution, just follow whatever's on the printed paper, whatever's on the internet, just follow it. And you know what, they even have the audacity of making predictions. They say that within a decade, all of this moon signing is going to finish. Everyone's going to come to the to the ultimately and easiest solution to this, by letting go of moon sighting altogether. That's like saying, na'udhu billah, one day everyone's just gonna do shirk, because it's just the easier solution. You don't have to worry about tawheed and finding Allah, and you don't have to, and everyone's gonna let go of praying because it's just so hard to wake up at Fajr. Everyone's gonna let go of fasting because it's just so hard to, stay hungry. It's just like those kind of predictions. And I like to say in place of that, وَمَكَرُوا مَكْرَهُمْ وَعِنْدَ اللَّهِ مَكْرُهُمْ وَإِنْ كَانَ مَكْرُهُمْ لِتَزُولَ مِنْهُ الْجِبَالِ. They plotted their plots, and Allah, He devised His plan as well. And their plots, they thought, were so big that they're going to move mountains by it. What happened? The mountain collapsed on their head. That's what these kind of predictions are really going to come down to. But I'll tell you this, that if they were to, another problem that we are facing in just a pragmatic way, let's say, let's accept the fact that there are people who are going to, unfortunately, accept the wrong way. They're going to go against the sunnah and follow the bid'ah of calculation. There's going to be a group that is doing it because, unfortunately, that is where we are now. If they were to want unity, and they were to really want us to do Ramadan and Eid on one day, they could change their criteria to visibility criteria, which I will tell you is 24-hour age, less more than, I think Sheikh Shakir said, 10 degrees elongation, and a few other parameters that are there that are very solid, and in fact, it is more likely that they will be one day late than not. That usually there will be a later day. Like for example, to just this year, I was walking out of the masjid and I saw one of these pre-printed calendars. It said the first day of Ramadan is said Tuesday. I just thought to my head, man, if you look at whether you look at it scientifically, whether you look at it in the Sharia, whether you look at it as a whatever way you look at it with some knowledge, you'll know that there's really very minimal chances of Tuesday. There's very minimal chances. Allah knows best, but we can't say that what's going to happen. But there's very low chances. Why then would someone print thousands of pieces of paper and with color and spend thousands of dollars in printing it and spreading it with a most likely wrong day of Ramadan beginning? Why couldn't they just to be on the safe side? Why couldn't they just say Wednesday? Either they did it without knowledge, which they shouldn't be doing, then they don't have a right to print that calendar, or the criteria of calculation which they're using is wrong. Had it been set on acceptable parameters, we would have had the correct day 90% of the time. Although it would be sinful to discard the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in moon sighting. It would still be sinful for changing the deen which Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught. And I remind you, on the day of Qiyamah, the Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is going to be flocking towards his Hawd al-Kawthar. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will see some people coming toward the Hawd to take a drink. When they're so thirsty, the sun is like one cubit above their head. They're so thirsty, they're flocking to him to get some drink. The angels will come from behind and tie them and start taking them toward Jahannam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will call, these are my people, these are my people. Where are you taking them? Where are you taking them? And they will say, you don't know how they changed your deen after you left. You don't know how they change your deen. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will say, "Suhqan, suhqan liman ghayyara ba'di," or kama qala alayhi salam, that do away with them, go away with them, go away with them for anyone who changed my deen after me. So we would still be sinful for doing that, but at least we'd have unity on one day. That would be it. And one other point I want to add to this: what does unity really mean? What does unity really mean? Right now as we speak, it is Maghrib or Isha time in
Mufti
Makkah
Sahab, sorry for
Mukarramah.
interrupting. Sorry, it's just alhamdulillah, because if we're going to talk about unity, what is the way to path forward? Many times people claim that there's no one going out to cite every single month, and I think this is a big misconception. Are there people citing every month? Are there ulama that we can rely on? Are there groups and people in America who are doing this work of local moon sighting? Do we have people like this, Mufti Sahab?
Most definitely there are. Most definitely there are. There's an organization that is presenting this panel discussion to you, by the name of Central Hilal Committee of North America, founded in 2009, working for the last 12 years, alhamdulillah, to establish proper moon sighting all across America.
MashaAllah.
As we speak, we have a network of brothers and sisters who go out to sight the moon in 17 states. And alhamdulillah, they report back to the Central Hilal Committee. Central Hilal Committee is like an umbrella organization of all the local moon sighting
Molana, are
networks
you
as
sure
well.
it's 17, not 23 states?
Yeah, that was
No, it's
23.
yes, it was, but as of late, we found that some of the states, they have very few Muslims, and there's not a
Uh-huh.
lot of activity going on there. So we're giving you accurate numbers. Right now, it's as of today, we have 17 states that are actively going out and looking. And mind you, when I say that there's 17 active states, that includes the hotbed of the Muslim population,
Yeah.
New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and this whole Virginia, Maryland. That's one area. Florida, Georgia is another area. Texas is another area. California is another area. Seattle, I'm sorry, Washington State
Arizona.
is another area. So that's six regions. Sorry, Michigan and Illinois is another. All six regions, we have groups and subcommittees going out and looking for the moon in every single area. It's every single region of United States, and the Muslims are there in large numbers. They go out for the Eid and Ramadan.
MashaAllah,
Alhamdulillah.
Mufti Sahab.
Every month they
Does
go out. Yes.
does CHC also connect with other groups in America too?
CHC works in collaboration with quite a few groups. And alhamdulillah, we have worked in very close relation as well with Crescent Watch and with a few other organizations that alhamdulillah have been are working on moon sighting as well. Alhamdulillah. See, the unique thing about CHC is that it is run, managed, and maintained by ulama. by people
MashaAllah.
who are traditionally trained scholars of the Deen and the sciences of Islam from reputable organizations. And Alhamdulillah, there's imams, there's ulama, there's huffaz from all over that represent pretty much a lot of the demographics that make the salad bowl of America. We believe in the salad bowl. We don't have to change ourselves and make ourselves melting pot, right? So
Where's the meat though?
Yeah, I
We
know,
like
right?
meat.
We'll get the
yeah.
Zabiha meat, inshallah.
So, and I'd like to say this is the only path of unity. If we all come to go out and sight the moon. Now, look, let's talk about this very few quick things. That our time is pretty much up. We promised to finish at 5, and we also have Q&A, and I see already we have many Q&A coming. Just very quick things before we end. One thing is, some people they like to keep talking about unity, and we have to go with our local masjid. There's no such thing in the Sharia and the Deen that says follow your local masjid. There's no such thing in our Deen that says if there's someone local person. Unfortunately, the local imam doesn't even get the chance to speak his mind about this. What we found from our research and from our travels throughout America, the imams are oppressed in this matter. They want to speak their mind about the Sharia, and we've taken surveys amongst them. We found that overwhelming majority of the imams, they all want to follow the proper path. Of course, I'm sure all of them, but all want to follow moon sighting. But yet, the board members,
Yeah,
unfortunately, Allah forgive us
yeah.
and forgive them, the board members who don't have knowledge of the Deen, they dictate that no, 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 we're going to get this benefit if we follow calculations, we're going to follow it. Either you lead the Eid Salah or we're going to fire you. That's where it comes down to. And these are very words we say out of a lot of painful words that we're sharing, that this is where many of our imams are. And even I'll tell you the truth, I know imams who have had to secretly fast and go out and lead the Eid Salah because they weren't able to they weren't able to let go of their commitment in the masjid, and they have a family, they have responsibilities, they're not able to let go of the job either. They're in such a tight position, and then eventually they let go of their job because I'm not willing to sell my Deen for that. That's where we are standing. This is how atrocious this matter has become. Rather, they talk about unity. You know what unity really means? Today, what does it really mean if we think about it? As we speak, it is Isha Salah in Mecca. It is probably Fajr Salah somewhere on the other side of the world. And yet we are all unified as Muslims. Does that mean because we're praying Asr here, they're praying Isha there, and they're praying Fajr there, that we're disunified? No, there's no disunity in the Muslims because of that. It's just like the natural variances we find in our skin color and our tongues. We find natural geographic differences in what day we celebrate the Eid. We are all unified that we do Eid on Shawwal first, maybe Shawwal first, or all unified that we do Ramadan on Ramadan first. Maybe Ramadan first will be Tuesday, maybe it'll be Wednesday. Who knows? But we're all going to be unified that we're doing it according to the Sunnah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and we're going to find that Ramadan 1 is when we're going to start. Now, that's one thing. The other thing is, can we? Why there are other people who don't even want to entertain the idea of moon sighting? It is actually, we don't have enough time right now to talk about this next topic in detail right now, but in very brief, that can't we just follow one country? And namely, they say, can we follow Saudi Arabia about this? And they like to name it global moon sighting. I'll just say two things about this, and maybe we can have a different presentation about it. The brothers and sisters who are interested, you can definitely email us and tell us about how you feel. If you want to hear about it, we're definitely willing to do another presentation about global moon sighting and why that's wrong. That's a wrong concept. What they call the global moon sighting, the first problem is it is mislabeled. It is a false advertisement. They say global moon sighting, but they want to follow one country in the world, Saudi. And mind you, we have the utmost respect, without any doubt, without any limit, for our Haramain al-Sharifain, Zadahum Allahu Sharafan wa Azaman, the Makkah al-Mukarrama, Madinah Munawwara. But unfortunately, they want to follow the sightings of Jeddah and the sightings of Riyadh, rather, instead of Makkah al-Mukarrama, because no one sights the moon there in all of these outlier times, the times when Saudi says they sighted it, no one says else they sighted. They're just following the government instructions there of Saudi Arabia. We'd like to say very simply that, listen, the idea of global moon sighting should have been that you follow the whole world. Yet you only follow one country, and the rest of the countries are not able to cite it. If they were to have cited it, this is a strictly scientific point. If they were to have cited it in Saudi, it is ever the more obvious that it would be cited in America, because we are in the west and the moon rises from the west. As the earth rotates, it is more visible in the west than in the east. It is impossible that it would be cited there. And the Muslims, all the millions of Muslims of Africa and in Europe and in North America and in South America, none of them cite, but Saudi claims to cite. So it doesn't work that way. Global moon sighting is not an acceptable solution. It does not unify. Rather, it is just in the name of unity, you make another group out of it. What is the way of unity? What is the way of unity? That we all go out and cite, and we come to a central body of scholars who are going to sit down and talk about and discuss the acceptability of these reports, etc., and etc., according to Sharia parameters, and then they make a decision based on that. This is the
And
way of our Deen.
And Mufti Sahib, Jazakallah khairan. And definitely it requires its own discussion about global moon sighting versus local moon sighting. And especially about people asking questions about, the conditions, about like how does a CHC handle these things and tackle these things, about telescopes and binoculars. I think all of this stuff, really, the public really deserves to hear these answers, inshallah ta'ala. And definitely a follow-up panel will definitely be arranged for this, inshallah, so you all can get your questions answered.
That one question I think is very
Yeah,
hot. Is a very hot
yeah.
question. That how does CHC determine where the sighting comes from? You see, look in the when we say that we look for unity, we look for unity based on the Sharia parameters. So if there's people throughout USA, our brothers and sisters who live in the different regions of USA, and we have to be very practical about it. The majority of Muslims, they are spread in the US in these following places. You have the Northeast, New York, New Jersey, and this area here. And then you have in the Southeast, it's not as much, but it's there in Florida. There's a lot of Muslims there, mashallah, around Georgia and Florida. Then if you go out toward the west, or in Texas, you have Muslims. In California, you have a lot of Muslims along the west coast, and then northwest, and in the Midwest, in Illinois, and then in Michigan, you have a lot of Muslims, and of course, spread out other places. So I'm talking about like the hot spots. So these 6 hotspots, they're in 3 different time zones. So if we are going to exclude the people who are following moon sighting in the Sharia from our brothers who live in the same country as us, but because they're 2 hours or 3 hours behind us in naturally be in time, then we're just going to be excluding our brothers and sisters who live across the country. We're going to be excluding them, and we're not going to. It's only a 2-3 hour difference. It's not too difficult for us to wait for them and see if there's a sighting up to the west coast. That's what CHC does. It takes all of mainland USA as one country. Rather, it's a Central Hilal Committee of North America. We take all of North America, and we found also that North America, also parts of Central America, and even parts of South America, they go in the same time zone and the same, the same criteria as we are in the U.S. So that's why in Central Hilal Committee, we like to bring unity among all the Muslims of USA who are following the Sunnah, who are following moon sighting, and not leave them out because of just 2 or 3 hours. It is going to be easier for us that way, and that is what Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has given us a scope of understanding of where the borders can be drawn. The borders of this for CHC are all throughout North America, and I'll tell you, if the sun is setting, if the sunset happens at 7:30, and we wait until about 10:30 for our brothers in California, by that time, our Isha prayer for one night is going to be a little bit later, for the sake of helping, of waiting for our brothers on the west side, who are also looking to follow the Sunnah. I think it's worth it, and that's what CHC adopts. So in all fairness to the brothers and sisters who are looking to follow the Sunnah, what's going to happen if we don't are not willing to wait for an hour, 2 hours? Then obviously you're just going to have 2 different days that can be avoided, within the correct parameters. So that is
And
a
also,
question that we
Mufti
can
Burhan,
ask.
this criteria and these parameters were decided by a group of ulama, hundreds of ulama, amongst them seniors across multiple conferences over the last 10 years. Just to add to that, it's not just you or me who is saying this.
Yeah, and they're looking at the weakness of the strength of moon sighting right now, and all these things, putting a lot of considerations together and coming up with these conditions. It's not just they're coming up from their own side. I think a lot of young people, just really is people growing up in like a modern trend, or they have this idea or perspective. They think like these scholars are just making these things up. Well, they're going off of fiqh and understanding, and then they're coming up with these ideas here, or these parameters. So we want to make it clear for anyone who thinks about CHC like that. Allah protect us from it. They're trying their best, again, within the conditions that we have, and really thinking about how can we move forward, inshallah ta'ala, as a Muslim community in America.
So, Sheikh Shakil, let's go into the Q&A.
Yeah.
We're just a disclaimer. Not all the that's why we said in the beginning. Please wait until the presentation is over. The discussion is over before you post your questions. I see a lot of the questions that were posted in the interim, were already addressed. So I'm just gonna go through them. If they're already addressed or if they're not related, we're going to leave them out. Feel free to email us at info@hilalcommittee.org. If it's a relevant question, inshallah, it will be answered in due time. Mind you, Monday is a very, very busy day. Maybe we'll not get a chance to answer until after Monday, but nonetheless, inshallah, we will. Some people ask some very, very practical questions of organizations who adopted calculations, unfortunately. And yes, they unfortunately were the cause of the disunity and the dissension among the Muslim ranks in USA. We ask Allah to guide us and guide them away from that and bring them back to the pure Sunnah. Um, good question. When and how did the idea of astronomical calculation, when and how was it introduced? Sheikh Shakil, you have something to say about that?
I can leave it to you, Mufti Saab, mashallah. We have a, I find it to be strange. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, mashallah. I mean, the dates, the brothers are probably more accurate about it, but when this paper was originally introduced, I think back in 2006, and you can correct me.
2006. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So by a certain group, when they presented this paper about adopting calculations, again, their niyyah, Allah Ta'ala knows, of course, but they were trying to they put forward this opinion of calculations. The paper itself was riddled with errors and mistakes. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf writes his Caesarean moon births in response to that paper. We also have Sheikh Mukhtar Maghrawi, who writes a beautiful paper against it, also in refutation of it. And mashallah, Maulana Irfan Kabiruddin, rahimahullah, he also wrote a very wonderful book on it, which the Miscalculation book is, which is the CHC paper on this issue. The Miscalculation book is based off of what he wrote. So they were all refuting this argument because it was very riddled with errors, academic issues, and a lot of different issues. So it unfortunately continues to spread, or people continue to adopt it because they're only looking at ease or convenience. And because they think Deen is like a convenience store, so then they're taking this opinion too. And so that's what I understood. And of course, you guys can add a bit more, inshallah.
Someone asked a question. If someone lives in Seattle where it's cloudy for many days of the year, for much of the year, what do they do when it's so very often cloudy? That's why CHC includes. You're supposed to in the books it says very simply you're supposed to follow this the next place over where the sighting happens regularly. Right.
Yeah.
So that's why we include all of USA in our criteria, because it is impossible that all of USA is cloudy at one time. So it'll benefit all of us in the long run. Going through more of the questions. Throughout the world, this is actually not a correct thing. Throughout the world, Muslims follow calculations. That is not correct. That is not true. If you want to go by population, I'll tell you that the Asia has overwhelmingly the majority of the Muslims of the world living in it. Okay, Middle East and Africa have much less population of Muslims than Asia does, and pretty much all of Asia follows proper moon sighting. All of Africa follows proper moon sighting. Throughout the Middle East, what the Saudi ulama themselves they say, we follow moon sighting. We don't follow calculation, and pretty much all of the Arab countries say the same. Now, whatever weaknesses they have in their own moon sighting system, that's a different discussion, and that's why we don't follow particularly the Saudi moon sighting system. Another reason for that as well, because they say themselves that do not follow the Saudi or any country. You do your own moon sighting wherever you live.
Yeah, they're very clear about that.
They're very clear about that. Yeah.
Also, Maulana Mufti Burhan, the same question that you just addressed, I don't know if the person who asked it listened or not, but it talks about unity. If you can just summarize in a minute the concept of unity and how to foster, quote unquote, the hearts of the community under this premise.
I want to add in another person's question in there, where they a comment in there. They said in there that the objective of astronomical calculations is to adopting astronomical calculations instead of moon sighting is to bring the entire community on one standard. Well, the standard was already set
Yeah.
1400 years ago. Why are we going to set it again?
Yeah.
That's our simple question. It
Yeah.
was set 1400 years ago. If we have a misunderstanding of how to apply it and implement it, come to the scholars. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ ذِكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. If you don't know, ask the people who know. And there are extremely qualified scholars here in America, here in North America, who are ready to answer our questions and who have shown us how to do it. And listen, we should understand that this is not a new thing to us, like about this whole time zone issues and whatnot. If you look at other countries, India, for example, has, I believe, 2 time zones. If you go the undivided Indian subcontinent from what is modern day Bangladesh to what is modern day Pakistan, all the way over, this about, I think, 3 time zones. And they showed how they did their moon sighting system even before communication was there, like telephone and other such things. They did their moon sighting according to their local committees as far as they can get to within that jurisdiction. And they would have a central area was decided by the scholars that this area is as far as we can get to within a certain amount of time. And they followed that moon sighting as it is. It was never a problem for 1400 years. It was run smoothly. But now we have a problem with it. So the reason, the truth behind the sunnah, behind unity is the sunnah. That's the only way we can do it.
Yeah, and the
Moving
general
on,
question,
go ahead.
yeah, the question about
Go on, go on.
local masjid, your masjid. If your local masjid is doing something again which is not correct, right? The best thing is always looking for another masjid which is. You'll generally find that there are always a mix of communities in every area in America, and so you will find a masjid which is doing local moon sighting, inshallah ta'ala, hopefully. And the most important thing is that we really stress this, that talk to your boards, talk to your communities, and really try to get this. Mashallah, CHC will themselves come, inshallah ta'ala, to present this issue to them and explain it, inshallah. You can also share this video with them.
Maulana Shakil and Maulana Zakaria Badat, 2 of our scholars, traveled from Florida and Massachusetts all the way over to Washington, to Oregon, to give a presentation about this. And Alhamdulillah, that community has been following the Sunnah since then. Actually, another question, Sheikh Shakil and Mufti Idris. وَالْقَمَرُ قَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلِ. I know it's a topic, and we, because of for the sake of brevity and the sake of saving time, we skipped over some of these issues. They were there in the presentation. وَالْقَمَرُ قَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلِ. Some people use this to say the ayat says that the moon, we have set it at stages. Some people use this to justify using calculations. So look, Allah said He put in stages, He put in phases, He put in cycles. What is the answer to that?
I mean, do you want to listen to the 2 hour thing again? Like, I don't, like, yeah. So, I mean, look.
No, particularly this
yeah.
issue.
Particularly this issue, again, no one's denying the astronomy behind it. We made it very clear from the beginning, Mufti Burhan said it very beautifully, that Muslims have always been at the forefront of these fields. No one is denying any of these things. What we're saying is that Allah Ta'ala, along with the manazil, has also created a manzil called the hilal. And in the beginning of the month, Allah Ta'ala commanded from His Nabi alayhi salatu that you have to go and sight it. No one is denying it. Again, we all agree that it's there. But the fact is, and even scholars, astronomers of today are saying, you can't really determine it for sure of surety. People actually have to go out and sight it themselves. So no one is denying the fact that Allah has made these different mansions or phases or whatever. But we're saying that Allah has also commanded from His Nabi alayhi that we have to go and sight it every single month. That should be clear for everyone.
Also, this ayah is against them. It's a proof against them, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about calculations, or He talks about this concept in the Quran, yet doesn't command us to follow that to start the moon.
Yeah.
To start the months.
And on the top of that, listen, we also have our destinies, our fate written by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thousands of years before we were born. But that doesn't mean we can calculate it and say that always going to happen like this. Fortune telling is haram. We can't calculate our fortunes, our destiny, even because though it's destined. Qaddarna, qadr, the same word is used. Even though it is predestined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can't calculate it. Calculating our destiny is called fortune telling or soothsaying, which is clearly haram. Man ata kahinan faqad asaba al-qasim, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah.
that the one who goes to a soothsayer or fortune teller, the palm reader, he has disobeyed Abu al-Qasim Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So that doesn't mean we can calculate our fate. Similarly, we can't calculate the hilal.
Yeah, and there are
What
other
is the
questions.
correct way to what is the correct way to sight the moon? Why can't we use binoculars? How is it practical for Muslims on East Coast to wait? Okay, so there's three questions in one. What is the correct way to sight the moon? You face the western horizon where the sun is setting, and if you follow CHC on either through email, Twitter, WhatsApp, or our app, you'll get these instructions of how to sight the actual moon and what is done. Why can't we use binoculars? We say by CSC criteria, we allow binoculars, but with very strong and limited criteria to it. And usually, those criteria that we apply, it is more often than not, it is cited without a binocular as well. It's just because a particular person was there in that particular place, he needed a binocular. But if he was somewhere else, he probably could have seen the moon without it as well, due to the condition of it. So and then what is the practical, how practical is it for the Muslims on the East Coast to wait for the Muslims on the West Coast? It's as practical as praying your Isha Salah half an hour later than your time is probably. Some people.
Mufti Burhan, one of the comments came that your voice is a little low. Either
I'm
speak
so sorry.
louder or come close to the mic. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I can't come closer to you in Illinois. But I'll
But
try
you
to
can
talk
come close
louder.
to the mic though.
So yeah. So one of the let's see next.
Yeah, there's also another question here about, mashallah, this is a very important topic, but why don't we focus on other topics like atheism? I tell you, man, like, mashallah, we do. It's not like it's not done like that. It's just,
Oh,
there's
wait,
just so
wait.
much.
Define we.
Yeah, yeah.
Maj-
Mashallah. Without Shakil, you can do istighfar while I tell people this. He travels. He travels state to state. He travels city to city, giving presentations on atheism. And Alhamdulillah, Mufti Idris, myself, we work very actively. We try to work, if Allah accepts, on halal monitoring services about halal issues, and we give presentations about it. We give practical experience about it. We even get certified stores and restaurants about it. So it's not that we're not talking about atheism. We're not talking about halal issues. We're not talking about our youth and how they're supposed to remain Muslim. We're not talking. It's not that we're not talking about them. We're talking about them. But my question is, why shouldn't we be talking about this issue
Yeah.
too? Why shouldn't we? Because this is the time. People only care about this in Ramadan, and we have to do it. We have to do it. It's a problem that is existent in our communities. Why shouldn't we talk about it?
Yeah. Inshallah, there are also other questions, and I think inshallah definitely a follow up, especially talking about local versus global, and the different conditions inshallah ta'ala. And I think one question came up is just, should every local masjid announce or declare themselves, or should we have one unified body to declare for all of America?
If we listen, if we
We
were
can end
to
with this
treat
question. Yeah.
yeah, we can end with this question. There's a lot more, but I can see that most of it is probably
Repetitive. Yeah.
yeah, repetitive, or a more I think what's that, administrative issues. If we look at it this way, that if every masjid becomes their own central body, then we're never going to have any kind of unity whatsoever. We're all going to have to come to a central body, and that was the objective of Central Hilal Committee, that everyone has their own Hilal committee in their local areas, but they will follow. They will all come back to one central committee where they have delegates from all of these subcommittees throughout the states, and they meet on a conference call to discuss the results of that night's moon sighting. Or if it's another month and there's no sightings, for example, they can all pass information to each other. And there's a structure, obviously. Out of all of the delegates, one is selected to be the deciding person, that, and then others are coordinators. So Alhamdulillah, we who are sitting on the panel today are all coordinators from different states. So we're from New York, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. So we have our elders above us, and we have our peers who are working in the field, that are reporting back, and we in the middle level come and we help out in this matter, in finding out where the sighting was and how reliable and it is, and with the help of many other bodies that are there. Alhamdulillah, we're trying to bring unity in together. That's the objective of Central Halal Committee.
And actually, if you're listening to this broadcast, there's a high chance that in your state there is a representative of CHC.
Yeah.
So we encourage you to connect with them and connect your masjid to them, because CHC, mashallah, has the resources. And just like, some masajid, they switch to calculations, and when they're asked questions, they point to some organizations. Similarly, if your masjid follows the proper way, then if someone asks questions, you can point them to Central Hilal Committee, and we will provide you with the resources. And also, this is the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he used to announce, and then his deputies would then announce in their local areas. So similarly, that's the idea behind Central Hilal Committee.
Okay. I saw some brother wanted to be added to the Central Hilal Committee. I think the member list, or is it? If you can email us, inshallah, we will get back to you on that. And we thank all of the brothers
Mufti
and
Burhan,
sisters.
if we can post a WhatsApp join link in this chat, that will be very beneficial. Everyone can join right now.
Yeah, I can give you right now very quickly.
The presentation, inshallah, will hopefully also be shared as well. You can always go to our website as well, inshallah ta'ala, so that way you can stay up to date with all the different articles and research that's been written on these topics, inshallah. Hopefully, inshallah, we can get this recording out for everyone as well, so that way they can benefit and share it with their various masajid. And
Mufti, I don't have that link right now. 1 second. Let me just quickly find it.
halalcommittee.org, mashallah. And we say
Yeah.
Jazakumullah khairan to our Mufti Sahibs, mashallah. You all did wonderful work today, mashallah. May Allah accept it from you all, and all the other efforts and khidmat of the Deen, mashallah.
1 quick second. I want to just post this before we go. So join Hilal Committee group. Yes, here I go. I think I have a link. Yes, I do. Okay. I'm putting it in the chat for all of our brothers and sisters. There it is. And inshallah, you can join onto that. Jazakumullahu khairan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive any shortcomings and mistakes that have come. Any wrong that was said is, I'm sorry, putting it in the chat. I think it came only to, yes, I'm so sorry. 1 second. Let me put it again to all of the attendees, all panelists, all attendees. Yes, we just gave it. Everyone should have just gotten it in the chat. Jazakumullahu khairan.
Mufti Burhan, that group is full. That group is full.
Is it okay? Let me give the other group.
We have our, mashallah.
Hold on. Luqman Wazir sent it. MashaAllah.
Yeah. 1 second.
This man, mashallah.
You found it, Sheikh?
Yeah, it's on it's in the chat. Luqman Wazir sent it.
Yeah, I sent it to everyone.
Yeah.
MashaAllah.
Please let us know if you got it, inshallah.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah. Okay.
Jazakumullahu khairan.
سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك
ونتوب إليك. Assalamu Alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We'll give a couple of minutes for anyone who wants to join the group, inshallah, and please do so. Jazakallah.